Selectmen meeting here on Tuesday, June 23rd. Again, coming to you remotely. So as always, I'll read the governor's required statement here. So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Westborough Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by tuning to Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon Channel 28 or Charter 192, or that can be streamed online at westboroughTV.org/live-stream-government. So thank you for that. And real quickly, I will run through the agenda, and do appreciate we haven't had this on here for a while, but while it's rather lengthy, I'm going to read through real quickly, kind of open appointed positions or committees, just so folks on TV can hear that, but also ask that folks can go on to the town's website and see this as well. So anyways, the town manager appointed openings: constable for a one-year term, insect and pest control officer for a one-year term, measurer of wood for a one-year term, municipal building committee, 2 positions, 3-year term, cable TV advisory committee. Board of Selectmen appointed: the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, 1 alternate member for 1-year term, Council on Aging, 1 member for a 3-year term, Country Club Operating Committee, 1 non-voting member, 3-year term. I believe we also have a voting member on that committee now too, if I'm not mistaken. Cultural Council, 12 members for 3-year terms, Diversity Inclusion Committee, 3 members, indefinite term, Historical Commission, 1 non-voting member, 3-year term, Housing Partnership Committee, 1 member, 3-year term, Open Space Preservation Committee, 1 member for a 3-year term, the Recreation Commission, 1 non-voting member for a 3-year term, Senior Disabled Taxation Aid Committee, 2 members for an indefinite term, Trustees of Soldiers Memorial, 1 voting and 1 non-voting member, both for 3-year terms, Veterans Advisory Board, 1 member for a 1-year term, Westborough Spirit Committee, 1 member for a 1-year term, and the Youth Commission, 1 adult member for a 3-year term. So a number of them out there, and we welcome anybody that's interested to contact the town manager selectman's office with their expression of interest. So real quick. Yep.
May I add one more?
Sure.
That there is a vacancy on the Westborough Housing Authority, that the Board of Selectmen has the authority to fill that appointment. So if people are interested in that, we would need a letter of interest by July 7th.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. I forgot that you sent that, so thank you for doing that. Okay, real quickly through our agenda tonight. So our first agenda item will be a reorganization of the board. We then will have discussion vote, applications for alteration of premises for outdoor dining. Actually, we'll be skipping over that because we do not have any of those this evening. A vote on board committee appointments and reappointments, approval of meeting minutes, discussion on Westborough's town seal, a presentation on plans to address community food insecurity over the summer. We'll then go into our weekly at 6:30 p.m. our weekly joint meeting with the Board of Health, discuss impacts and establish processes with respect to COVID-19. And at 7 p.m. of that meeting, discussion vote on beach opening at Lake Chauncey with the Recreation Commission. 7:30 p.m. then coming out of that meeting, we'll discussion vote on a school committee resolution, followed by discussion vote on the dispatcher's contract. We'll have the town manager's annual performance review and contract extension, discussion vote regarding community statement, town manager's report, issues and correspondence of the selectmen, and then we do have a number of things for executive session at the end of the meeting this evening. So with that, first item on our agenda is typical after the town election, although albeit later this year, is for a reorganization of the board. And I believe Selectman Emery had a motion for us.
I do have a motion. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine.
I would like to make a motion for a slate of Shelby Marshall for chairperson and Alan Edinburgh for vice chairperson.
I'll second that.
Great, Syed.
And I also would like to thank our former chair for the work that he did during a particularly trying time for this town. And I know I'm a source of grief for him frequently, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate the work that he does.
Well, thank you for that. And as well for all of you. I think it's for all of us deserve a pat on the back. It hasn't been easy and probably not what any of us thought we were signing up for, but I think, we've done and continue to do the best job that we can.
I do think that this has been the most difficult period for a town manager and a chair and vice chair of the Board of Selectmen that I can remember. I mean, it's just been so incredibly full of work, hard work, very thoughtful work, and long hours. So I appreciate everybody's work, but obviously Christy and Ian and Shelby on that.
Again, thank you.
And Kim.
Yes.
I think the thanks go on and on and on to
Yeah, they
everyone.
do.
So
Down the line, but yes, thank you, Kim, as
Support.
well. So we have a vote and a motion. So all those in favor, roll call vote. Selectman Marshall,
Marshall, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi,
Yes.
Selectman Emery,
Yes.
and Selectman Johnson, yes, as well. And with that, I can turn over the meeting to our new chair, Shelby Marshall. So Shelby, take it away.
So Shelby, I'm going to rearrange our pictures.
Oh no, I look tucked in the corner, and that's a good place for me. I'm good with that. I don't know where I appear on the screen for everyone else.
I'm very happy to go on mute.
So the first item, actually, we get to pass over, as Ian already mentioned. I do want to just thank Lee for the slate that she put forth to this board. I think we're a great board. We've got great chemistry. We work well together. We disagree when we need to disagree, and we assert our opinions. And Ian has always, I think, done a great job of allowing for thoughtful, comprehensive discussion, and obviously work well with our town manager and assistant town manager and partner. So it is hard work, but I know I love it every day, and I learn every day, and I'll continue to learn this role, and I'll rely on all of you to remind me when I need to not make a motion or something like that. So not perfect, but here we go. Okay, so the first item of business is that we'll have our board and committee appointments and reappointments. And I'm going to try to navigate all the technology. Here we go.
So I would make a motion if you want.
Please, thank you, Ann.
Yeah, I'll move to reappoint Margaret Manasian to the Sander Pond Conservation Area Warden
Bless you.
for a term ending June 30th, 2021. Actually, I think we have a second person for Sander Pond Conservation Area Wardens, Peter Bowman, as well, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And that's the same term, right?
Ending June 30, 2021, yes.
So basically move to reappoint Margaret Manasian, Peter Bowman to the Sander Pond Conservation Area Wardens for that term ending June 30th, 2021. And move to appoint Earl Story as a voting member of the Country Club Operating Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2023. I'll move to appoint Alan Edinburgh to the Economic Development Committee for a term ending June 30th. I'm assuming that's 2021, not 2020. And I want to give you only a few days there, Alan. And then I'll move to appoint Ian Johnson, myself, to the Capital Expenditure Planning Committee for a term to end June 30th, 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second from Emery.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on any of those items?
Great volunteers.
Shelby, thank you for your work as an Economic Development Committee, and Alan for your work on Capital Planning capital expenditure planning, and with our prior article to kind of reorganize the board, I think it makes sense to do a little shuffling of these committee assignments just to balance things out. So
Excellent.
thank you both for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome and happy to
forward
do
to
it. Great. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll call for a roll call vote. Alan?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Syed?
Yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
And Marshall, yes. 5-0, 5 being present.
I think we had one on there too that was a, go ahead, Christy, it's your appointment. And then,
Yeah, so initially we had said that Dexter Blois was not a reappointment, but he is going to be reappointed to the Municipal Building Committee at this time. So I just need to make the board aware of that because you have a veto provision in the charter.
I thought he had said he didn't want to be reassigned.
So initially he did, but we actually had another resignation from the Municipal Building Committee. And in order to have a quorum, he said that he would stay on to finish out the Forbes Municipal Building project. So.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
As always, we appreciate everyone volunteering for all those positions and keeping our town and community running as effectively as it does. Great. Okay. So we'll move to our next agenda item, which is approval of meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? For June 1, 2020.
Actually, I think it's June. I didn't see June 1. Did I?
Yep.
There were 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did.
Joint meeting of advisory committee and board of selectmen, June 1.
I'd move the acceptance of the June 1, 2020 joint meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or changes? Okay. All those in favor? We'll start with Selectman Hashmi,
Yes.
Selectman Emery,
Yes.
Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
and Marshall, yes. 5-0, 5 being present. And we'll move to the meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the June 2, 2020 minutes as presented in our packet.
And I'll second that.
And any discussion or changes? Okay. Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Emery,
Yes.
Selectman Hashmi,
Yes.
and Marshall, yes. Great. And the minutes of June 4, 2020.
I'll move their acceptance.
I second that.
So, Madam Chair, can I just
Yes.
comment?
Yes.
So I know I wasn't present and I'm not going to vote on the minutes, but I'd asked that, I'd asked when I wasn't going to be present that I was actually attending the CMRPC meeting at that time. And I don't know if we can add that I was attending that meeting or not.
Yep, I think Sela is on and I think can make that change for us. So as
Yeah,
amended,
no problem. Sorry, I forgot about that.
thank you, Sela. Thank you, Syed. Okay, any other discussion on these minutes? Okay, Selectman Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi,
I'm going to pass, abstain, I wasn't there.
and Selectman Emery,
Yes.
and Selectman Marshall, yes. So 4-0-1. Okay, great. Thank you, Sela, for all your work and keeping us current and keeping the public up to date on all that's going on. Okay, great. So we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which I'll take for now. Beginner's luck. We're going to move into our next agenda item, which is a discussion about Westborough's town seal. We do have a resident who will be providing a presentation. Alan, is she on?
Shelby, can we maybe move to other agenda? I think we had posted 5:30 and I think people know it was coming on at
Sure.
5:30. So
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Do you want to do the resolution?
yeah, let's do the resolution.
Sure. Great suggestion. Selectman Edinburgh, do you want to take that item? I know.
Sorry, just working the different screens.
That's okay.
Let me make this larger so I can read it. So, as people are aware, the impact of COVID-19 on budgets for the town and the school has already been significant. Given the current guidance from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on what schools need to do to make the school building safe for faculty, staff, and students in the fall, there will be extensive costs involved. Those costs could involve things as simple as making sure there are enough masks for faculty, staff, and students, plexiglass dividers, changes to the way food service is done, and even issues with the fact that school buses generally will only be able to run at 25% capacity to allow for social distancing on the school buses. Resolving those challenges are going to take a lot of money, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, or the National Association of School Committee estimates on average nationwide it'll be about 1.7 million per school district. And so at their last meeting, the Westborough School Committee voted on a resolution consistent with the Mass Association of School Committees, asking the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, the Governor's Office, the state legislature, and our delegation to fully fund any mandates related to COVID-19 and COVID-19 safety that are imposed on the schools, so that the cost of those mitigations don't fall to individual school department, individual school and town budgets. And so I would move that we pass a parallel resolution in support of the school committee's resolution, and one that asks our representatives, Senator Eldridge and Representatives Dykma, Gregoire, and Kane, to aggressively pursue funding for those mandates.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
It makes
Madam
good
Chair?
sense. Thank you, Ellen, for taking the lead on that.
Okay, is this something I should move and read in?
Actually, can I just make a quick comment?
Go ahead, Syed.
I don't have a problem with the resolution. I'm completely supportive of the resolution. I think it's incumbent for us to, and maybe this is something the school committee needs to take up or we need to take up together. It's worth noting, literally just last year, that the state passed the Student Opportunity Act, and that there was no funding. The legislature failed to provide a funding source for that Student Opportunity Act. And so here we are a year later in the midst of a pandemic, and we are potentially not going to get the funding that act promised. And now there's going to be additional need for additional funding that we may or may not get. So I'm completely supportive of the resolution, but this resolution to me is a start of a broader discussion that needs to happen about school funding, about town funding, and the urgency of doing that. And while I'm here as a selectman, I'm also a representative of the Massachusetts Municipal Association. I'm on the board of that. And one of the things that, as is Christy, and one of the things that we had talked about well before this pandemic was that there needs to be an equitable distribution of those funds, that we do need to consider making sure that all students in the Commonwealth get, at least $100 per student of funding from the state. So I don't have a problem with this resolution, but I think we need to put further pressure. But as that is not on the agenda, I'll stop there. But I hope that the school committee will, or this board will consider future discussion of this topic.
Thank you. Okay. My sense is we probably should read the resolution in full. Christy, you have any guidance there? Yes? Okay. All right, Alan, I'll let you take it away since we have a...
Okay. Whereas, if schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas, for schools to open safely, they are required to incur enormous additional staffing, transportation, and materials expenses. And whereas funding for these dramatic increases is not guaranteed under the CARES Act, grants, or any existing legislation. And whereas the failure to fund these exceptional COVID-19 expenses will require funds to be diverted from educational programs and services. And whereas the Commonwealth has a responsibility to mandate COVID-19 safety guidelines and ensure that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines, therefore, let it be resolved that the Westborough Board of Selectmen fully supports the Westborough School Committee's resolution dated June 10th, 2020, that the Commonwealth must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates, and further request the demand for no unfunded mandates for COVID-19 receive the full support and attention of our legislative delegation, and that our representatives actively work to secure the necessary funding.
Okay, great. So we have, Lee, did you have a comment?
Well, now we need a motion?
That's the motion.
That was a motion, okay.
Resolution.
Beautifully stated, Alan. I'm so happy that you did that amount of work on that.
Okay, so we have,
Appreciative.
thank you. So we have a motion.
And I second
Okay, thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay, any discussion on the wording or questions for Alan? Okay, call for a roll call vote. Selectman Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Hashmi,
Yes.
Selectman Emery,
yes.
Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
and Marshall, yes, 5-0 in support. Thank you very much for bringing that forward. Great. Okay, we are still a few minutes before 5:30.
We can also do the dispatcher contract if you want.
Thank you, Christy.
You marked up version of the dispatcher contract, and then Kim, just before the meeting, sent you a clean copy. But I'll just run through very quickly what the contract is. Basically, the dispatchers, this is their first contract since separating from the patrolmen's union, and so we removed all of the patrolman associated language from the contract. And they also received a COLA of 2, 2, and 2, so 2% each year, which is consistent with all of our other unions and non-union staff. We did make some changes to language beginning in the second year of the contract because this contract actually would have started on FY20, so July 1st, 2019. But so starting in the second year, we made some changes to the language for the shift bids, also the split shift and hold policies. We did cap comp time. We changed recall to 2 hours. We changed notice requirements for vacation. And then we actually added 2 certified training officer positions that will receive a stipend of $300 annually. So that is, we've actually voted the budget to include that 2% at town meeting on Saturday. And so we just need the board to approve the contract as presented and then have you come in and sign it.
Okay,
I would move to approve the dispatcher union contract for fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 22 as presented.
So I
Second
apologize,
that.
20 through 22. I wrote the wrong year.
You were testing me.
Yes.
I second that motion.
22.
great. Discussion?
I just want to say thank you to Christy, Kim, Pat for the work they did. Thank you to the union as well. They've been through a little bit of turmoil and turnover in terms of union leadership and being their first contract. So while it took a while, thank you to all involved. I think it is a fair contract. And in the end, came to one that we both could agree on. So thank all of you for that.
Well said. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Ian, we'll start with you.
Johnson, yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Syed?
Yes.
And Marshall, yes. 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much. Glad to have that one done.
Yes.
Okay. Again, still a few minutes before 5:30. I do see our resident guest speaker is on, but in the interest of the public, I'd like to wait till 5:30. Christy, could we do the community statement, do you think?
Sure.
Okay.
So this was actually making a community statement was brought up during issues and correspondence by Selectman Hashmi at the last meeting. Speaking specifically, I think about reaffirming our mission statement and vision. And so my recommendation would be that the board appoint 2 selectmen to work with myself and the chiefs to draft a statement that can be brought back for endorsement by the entire board. And this is really a statement, again, reaffirming our vision and mission, but also considering, sort of the times that we're in and things that are going on in the world.
Can I speak to this, Madam Chair?
Of course.
So I had brought this up, and while I do agree that we do need to issue I do believe we do need to issue a statement, and I do think it needs to be from the board with the collaboration of the town department. I just do not want a vacuous statement of a reassertion of it's just words cannot. This is not the time for empty words. I think that people are looking for actionable items. For instance, and one of the things I had mentioned, for instance, is expanding the membership of the EDC or encouraging the planning, the master plan committee to incorporate more residents, for instance, from rental units. So I think these are, I mean, if we do decide to go with a statement, that statement needs to be followed up by certain action items by the board that commits us to following through on those, not just a statement, oh yes, we believe in these values, but not only do we believe in these values, here we are putting a commitment to upholding those values.
So we need to move to designate 2 selectmen to work with the town manager and the chief. And I would move to designate one of those as Syed Hashmi
I agree.
because of his
Second.
interest and leadership in this. And if
I'll take it.
that's good. Then I would ask if anybody else wanted to volunteer. And if nobody else wants to volunteer, I'd be glad to do so.
So I would be happy to volunteer. I'm already a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And I think this, and
as
I,
new chair, I think that makes a lot of sense.
sure, yep, I'd be happy to do that.
So I'm going to change my motion to move to designate Syed Hashmi and Shelby Marshall to work with the town manager and chiefs to draft a statement to the community on behalf of the board.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ian. Any other comments at this time?
Yeah, Shelby, you know me, I always have something ready.
Yeah.
So I'll get something to you.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like ready right now. It's like, wow, that
No, I'll get something to you.
That was great anticipation. Congratulations. All right,
No,
great.
I think this is an opportunity not just to reaffirm the mission and vision, and really to Selectman Hashmi's point, the mission and vision statement we currently have came out of our strategic planning process, and the development of the strategic plan 2 years ago, and we're sort of approaching the end of that window. And so when we think about the actions that follow this statement, I think it can flow nicely into a refresh of the next generation of the strategic plan, and the actions we think that we want to prioritize over the next 2 years within town government. So I think the timing on this is fortuitous.
Any other comments from the board at this time? All right. So we have a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call vote. Alan?
Yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Lee?
Emery, yes.
Syed?
Yes.
And Marshall, yes, 5-0. Thank you for your support. Great. And Christy, I presume you'll take the lead to pull us all together, correct?
Right.
Great.
I'll
Thank you.
send you something hopefully by tomorrow, just outlining some of my thoughts, and we can start with that.
Sure. Great. Always good to start from something other than a blank slate. Great. Okay, being that it is 5:33, we've reached the time and just slightly surpassed it for the start of our next item, and that is a discussion regarding Westborough's town scale. I believe our guest speaker, Charlene Tebow, is on. Hi, Charlene. Thank you for joining us. I will do a brief, hi, yep, test your mic.
Is it working now?
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Excellent. So I'll just do a brief introduction of this item, and Charlene, then we'll turn it over to you because I know you have a presentation to make to the board.
Okay, thanks.
So you're welcome. So Charlene brought this matter to the board through our town manager regarding our town's seal, which is obviously an official item, icon, if you will. It is an item that is voted on and approved by the town through our town's legislative body at town meeting. And so any changes to that have to be ultimately approved through town meeting. But the matter has been brought to our attention because the town seal, for those that may or may not have noticed it, has a couple of items on it, one being the cotton gin. And Charlene will take us into the details of that in just a moment. I do want to recognize and thank the public. Since this item has appeared on our agenda, the Board of Selectmen has received numerous emails, and I want to thank the public for being engaged and interested in this. We've received words of really thoughtful words of support as well as opposition to the proposed change, or again, nothing formally has been proposed in terms of a new seal, but to the proposed concept. And I would encourage the public to continue to provide those comments. And so with that, I think I'll pause my comments and turn it over to Ms. Tebow.
Hi. So I am here today because I'm proposing the town, reevaluating the town seal, really taking a look at that. So I prepared a presentation. I know I had sent a copy of a PowerPoint to the board. I want to apologize for a typo that Chief Lori actually pointed out to me. Instead of saying 1794, it said 1974. So I'll just get that apology out of the way. I have a quick question because I'm not familiar with Google Meet. Is it possible for me to pull up my revised, finalized PowerPoint?
I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Alan is saying, yes, you can.
Okay.
If you click present now at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to select the window.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me see. Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
Working for the state, we use WebEx, so I'm not
Yep.
too familiar with this.
That's okay. While you're doing that, I will also say that this will not certainly be the only opportunity for public comment through the emails that we've already received. I think the board will certainly discuss it tonight, but there will be ample opportunity for future discussion. I just want to get that out there. We'll restate that probably many times during this presentation.
Sorry. Okay, I should hopefully be able to do that now.
It can take just a second too once you click on it. So, oh, there you go.
It is working. Thank you.
Nicely done.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, so again, I'm presenting in regards to revisiting the town seal. And I'd like to provide some background in regards to the cotton gin that is displayed on the seal. So the cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitney of Westborough in 1794. Eli had worked alongside his employer, Catherine Green, while he was tutoring down in the South at the time. And they worked together in its creation. Eli had based his invention off of a comb-like design to remove seeds from cotton. And this method on a smaller scale was at first established by slaves. The invention of the cotton gin revolutionized the cotton industry, which is undeniable in the United States. But Eli Whitney did not benefit from his invention as he had intended due to patent infringement. The introduction of the cotton gin also revitalized the slave trade in the United States, as this increased productivity, which required larger crops and an increased labor force. With that being said, there were pieces, or there was within the design, it did lend to Eli Whitney presenting a manufacturing method in 1797 using interchangeable parts for mass production when tasked to produce muskets. With that being said, I would like to move on to the message. And by that, I mean the message that Westborough is sending. It really is a matter of what is the image that Westborough wants to show proudly on their seal to represent the community as a whole? Do we want to continue to display a device that contributed to slavery within the United States, both in our community, and that also is portrayed to the outside community as well? I feel like this is a time with everything that's going on that we have to reflect upon whether we are proud of the inventor or we're proud of the invention. This is something that I have felt very passionately about for some time. I kind of publicly spoke out back around the 300th anniversary where the cotton gin was displayed on the Westborough box. Unfortunately, at that time, when I had reached out to my peer groups, I was met with people that were not aware of the cotton gin being on the seal, not being aware of the implications of the cotton gin. And then there were others that stated I was quote unquote triggered, and things along those lines. I felt very discouraged and didn't speak up at that time. With the current climate of our nation right now, it's something that I have brought up again and was received much differently. So I felt empowered to reach out to the town, to reach out to Ms. Christy Williams, the town manager, to have dialogue. I have also reached out to Chief Laurie, and we've engaged in conversations around this as well as the implications that this has. I've also spoken with Sergeant Daniels of the Westborough Police Department as well around his take on things as an officer, working within the community, as well as his experience being a Black officer within the community. I think this is a time for us to reflect upon the message that our seal sends to people of color, specifically Black people within our community. Is this a message of inclusivity that we're sending to the members of the community? I know, having been born and raised in Westborough, gone through the education system, learned about this stuff very early on in my educational career. I'm thinking of teachers that are since retired and or potentially passed away, unfortunately, that have provided me this information that I'm presenting today. And with that being said, I would like to also say that Westborough has also taught me to stand up for what's right, to stand up for the community as a whole. That was one of my main takeaways from my childhood in Westborough. I think it's important for us to understand that the cotton gin represents a sign of oppression, a contribution to people being treated as property. And my concern is that in perpetuating this, we're contributing to how the Black community is viewed, as well as how the Black community can view themselves. I should have prefaced this with, I am a social worker. In regards to my career, these are topics I feel very passionately about, both in my profession as well as in my personal life. So I did a little bit of research into how self-image and public image can impact the Black community. And per one study I reviewed, and I do have sources at the end, and I can email this to Christy to send to everyone so you guys have all of those links. Positive racial identity in Black children is connected to self-esteem and contributes to academic success as well as positive emotional functioning. Back in the 1940s, Kenneth and Mamie Clark had completed what is now considered the doll test, where children were presented with identical dolls aside from the tone of the doll's skin. During that study, children, both white and Black, had identified the white dolls as the good dolls that they wanted to play with, whereas they described the Black dolls negatively. And within their study, they had found that prejudice, discrimination, and segregation contribute to self-esteem of the self-esteem of Black children. Although segregation is not a factor in Westborough in 2020, it is important for us to understand that both prejudice and discrimination are unfortunately still in play in society. The town seal was created by town residents, students of the community, as part of the 250th birthday celebrations of the town. I think that's a great thing, involving the youth in civics and getting them involved in the community. which if this were to pass, I think that would be, or if this were to go to vote and to pass, I think that would be a great way to decide a new seal for the town. But I also think it's important that we do look at the time and the focus of education back when this was established. The seal was developed in 1967. This was towards the latter end of the civil rights movement. Also a year where segregationists such as Lester Maddox were voted into office and celebrated. In my research on Lester, kind of delving further into him, he was celebrated across media, Esquire, magazine articles about him. So just to gain a better understanding of where the world was at that time. And this is not reflective, and I'm not making any assumption as to anyone's stance, their thoughts, whether it be the students that had participated in this or the history teachers and the educators that provided education. But I think it is very important for us to understand the racial dynamics in the nation at the time and understand that this would impact the education that is being provided, and how our textbooks were written at that point, in regards to being inclusive of Black communities. And kind of bringing us back to present day, recent events within the United States have acted as a catalyst in regards to yet another civil rights movement. These events were related to police brutality, and I think it's important for us to really reflect upon the impact of our seal being displayed on uniforms of our officers, our firefighters, town vehicles, as well as town buildings, and the message that that can send. And understanding the impact that that can have on the relationship between local law enforcement and government officials, as well as the residents of the community. I would like to say Westborough has been a leader over the years. I know back in the 1920s, and I could be wrong on this, this is what my family speaks to, Westborough had hired their first female police officer back in the 1920s. My great aunt, I believe, Flora Swears. And that wasn't commonplace at that time. And we have been leaders over the years, and this is an opportunity for us to be leaders yet again. I would like to state that similar things have occurred in other communities. In Mashpee, Massachusetts, a local resident had brought up concerns regarding the town seal, given the depiction of violence on the seal related to the violence on the seal. And their concern was that this violence perpetuated the violence endured by Indigenous people of the area as Massachusetts was being settled. In 2019, Mashpee did vote on this to redesign their seal. I don't know, in my research, I don't know if it has been established as of yet, but the town did vote on it. So I thought it was important to discuss that there has been a precedent within the state that given oppression within the state to Indigenous or people of color, that there is a precedent that has been set previously. I initially did not create a public post regarding my proposal, and since the agenda came out, there have been several public posts. So my list that I sent to you has grown, and I know it is much larger at this point as to what people are recommending. In regards to this town seal, there are endless possibilities at this point. To be able to celebrate Eli Whitney in another manner, whether it be his portrait, display that he was the father of American technology, manufacturing, reference far more successful use of the interchangeable parts, potentially bringing the 100th town to the forefront, celebrating athletes and Olympians from Westborough. Westborough has a long history of amazing athletes, from Harry Crump of the Boston Patriots to Nikki Stone, to a young man that recently was signed to the Tampa Bay Rays, Ian Seymour. Celebrating the town's roots in farming, celebrating the Norse family, which an individual within a public forum had suggested this as they were abolitionists. And I know Westborough, in addition to the cotton gin, Westborough also has a history of the Underground Railroad having passed through the town. Another suggestion, celebrating the land of Westborough with the town's landscape displayed, or celebrating the history of sleigh manufacturing. And I'm going to stop presenting that.
I would just briefly want to add to that the Nipmuc Nation, our Native American heritage.
That is
I have a larger statement, but just to your list, I would add that.
I appreciate Selectwoman Emery.
I think given the public post there, that list of last slide could go on for a while at this point. There have been a lot of ideas submitted. Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Tebow. Really appreciate your presentation. I'm going to open it up to the board for comments. But before I do, Christy, is there anything you want to add at this point?
I just wanted to add, which I think just what you stated in the beginning, that under Mass General Law, any change of the town seal has to go to town meeting. Obviously, you would want to, if you were to move forward with that, there would be an alternative seal proposed. And so I would imagine that there would be a process for that. One of the recommendations that I have is that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee be asked by the Board of Selectmen to create that process. And then you could potentially appoint a board to review, or you could review some of the submissions that come in. But just certainly based on Ms. Tebow's list, there's a lot of opportunity. So I expect that you would want to have to set aside a group of people that could help work through that process.
Madam Chair, may I make a brief statement?
Yes, I was coming to you next, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And first, I want to say, obviously with everything going on, when I first received a call from Ms. Tebow, I didn't know how the conversation was going to go. And I have to tell you, Charlene, from a scale of 1 to 10, I give that conversation a 10. And I actually apologized to her because I wasn't aware of certain things that are associated, with the cotton gin. So through her education and through my own, I did find that this would be, obviously offensive to some people. And with everything going on in law enforcement, what would my take be? And quite frankly, when I first took over 2.5 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of the patch. But to me, it looked like, because of the poor quality of the patch, in my opinion, it looked like, the town steeple and a broken ladder to me. So I was really thinking of doing it before. Now, that this has been brought up, and I realized, and Charlene and I talked about this yesterday, that this is kind of bigger than above my pay grade, as in it does have to go to the voters. But the last thing I think, especially what's going on in the current climate, is, I'm not objecting to upgrading, our patch. The issue comes, and I'm just being honest, is this, we're making major cuts all the way around. We're talking about different things the schools will be facing. And, there's 2 patches on every uniform, shirt, jacket. We did change the design on the sides of the cruiser, but there is one of our patches in the back. And as stated, Charlene is absolutely correct. Ms. Tebow's 100% of the money. It's on everything. I mean, it's on our business cards. So, we'll have to talk about too, the financial impact given what we're facing right now. But I just wanted you to know that I had a very, in my opinion, productive conversations with Charlene. And I don't have an issue as the chief of police to say to make that change. And like I said, I've seen some of the back and forth on social sites. What I would say to people is, listen, we need to come together now. We need to have these conversations, then come to action and work together. We cannot take these things on a personal level. And there's changes to be made across the board that are big and small. But I really would like to see Westborough, because we are an amazing town, very special town, come together and work through this. I know I was educated, when you first bring something up, but it's something I think we should discuss. And I think Christy's right. I think getting the diversity committee involved, which Sergeant Daniels is a part of, giving me the opportunity to talk with my entire staff, and really work through this. And I think we have time, with town meeting being, in October. But I just want everyone to know that, my opinion, this is from the heart from Ms. Tebow, and she's not looking to cause any issues. I'm hoping, people will listen. As you can see how well prepared she was today, before you folks. So I'll leave it at that. I just want to thank her for the conversation, and I look forward to doing whatever I can to work with Westborough to make this continue to be just a great community.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
very
Chief Flory. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time and investment speaking with Ms. Tebow and before this came before the board. Thank you.
And thank you, Charlene.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, can I speak for a bit?
Sorry, yes, go ahead, Selectman
So
Hodges.
first, I want to thank Ms. Tebow for the amount of work and for bringing this to our attention. And to kind of echo Chief Flory, I actually also, and I also appreciate his comments, but I also had to do my own reading and my own research. And much like you, I am deeply fascinated by the fact that this seal was adopted in 1967. I'm also fascinated by the fact that the context of those times, 50 years on, are so much similar to the times that, there are echoes that are present, which profoundly scare me. And if you just would give me a few minutes, I just want to take a little history. The original sin of this country, and it's now my country also, was slavery. And that cancer, that wound was so deep that brother killed brother over this. And there was a civil war. And after that war, there was a chance to heal that wound, but it was never taken, and we got Jim Crow. And 100 years later, fast forward, 1964, the Civil Rights Act is passed, Voting Rights is passed, all those things come to pass. But but as you know, that summer in 67, right, there are riots in Newark and there are riots in Detroit. And things got so bad, I looked it up, 2,700 American paratroopers were deployed to Detroit with Huey helicopters, which most Americans had not seen on US soil. That's how bad things were. And 1 year later, and you alluded to this, 1 year later, in 1968, Reverend King and Senator Kennedy died, so that any chance there was for some racial reconciliation just went. And then in that same year, the challenger, the contender for the presidency, came up with the Southern Strategy, which is basically using racial resentment to fuel electoral success. And then in 1980s, there was the stereotype of the welfare queens was used to ensure the same electoral success. So again, an opportunity was present to heal this racial divide. And once again, we didn't choose to bridge that divide. We ensured its persistence. In the 1990s, there was tremendous prosperity in this nation, and it could have been used to build our cities. I was in Baltimore at this time. But instead of that, instead of rebuilding our cities, a generation's worth of men of color were incarcerated, devastating their communities, a devastation which I personally saw. And so now here we are, 50 years later, dealing with the sins of 400 years ago. And Reverend Brown, I was taken by a comment that Reverend Brown made, that this is the monumental moment of our times. If we, as a town, as a country, do not come to grips with our legacy and its impact, we are at risk of propagating the very same crimes that we say that we are fervently against. And it's interesting, you talked about the cotton gin, and it's funny, not funny, but it was President Lincoln himself who drew the connection between civil war and slavery and the costs. And he writes, "Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet if God wills that it continues until all the wealth piled by the bondman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn by the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so it still must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether." Now, I've been reading those words over and over again. And I'm thinking we're still paying in blood for the wealth piled by the bondsman, 250 years of unrequited toil. We're still paying for every drop drawn by the lash. And we cannot We cannot escape the consequences of our sins, but we can find perhaps redemption, seek forgiveness, make amends. And I guess this is deeply personal for me because I grew up in a land where we've been killing each other over caste and creed for over a millennium, longer than a millennium, and we're still not done killing. We're still killing, and rivers of blood have been shed by us, by people that look like me. And we drink the same waters, drink the waters from the same river. We eat the same food. We talk the same language. We sing the same song. We cherish the same poetry. Yet we're still killing each other. We're fighting the same fights. So when does it stop? And what truly frightens me, and I'm grateful for all the comments that people made, but what truly frightens me is that we have people that once again are oblivious to the flames around them. People who want to continue meting out the same injustice that led us to this moment. And we're ever ready to add fuel to the fire of racial injustice, and ever ready to miss a chance to heal ourselves. And we're living, and the chief referred to this, we are living through the greatest crisis many of us have ever faced. Over 100,000 of our own citizens have died. And there are many problems that we have, but ultimately the solution is within us. If we can only open our hearts and our minds to see the suffering of others, and to comfort our neighbors in this time of need. And so while it's easy to look to leaders to be healers, ultimately that responsibility, I think, lies within the town. And this is why I'm speaking to this. We have within us, each of us, the power of 1,000 suns to heal each other. And this moment calls for that, calls for us to comfort our neighbors in their time of need and to heal each other. Perhaps the most miserable place in the world is a closed room in in a long corridor where a mother has to wait for the fate of her child. No one should have to bear that agony, no one. And so I've seen a lot of comments, and I would just, as the chief said, I would beg and plead with you. No one should have to bear that pain, and let us hold to each other and build a better tomorrow. And I want to close with one of my favorite quotes: with malice towards none, with charity towards all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we're in, to bind up the nation's wound, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow, and for his orphan, and to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. So I thank you for this opportunity to bring this topic up, Ms. Thibault, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for those thoughtful comments, Selectman Hashmi. I think I saw Ms. Emery's hand up. So Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Shelby. I'll try to be brief. We need a lot of conversation, such as Syed Hashmi has just started on, in a larger forum. I think right now I just want to make a couple sort of corrections and then my comment. So I'll start with the corrections. I think we need to add the Native American Nipmuc congregation to our list. And I think we need to remember that, as far as I'm concerned, America's original sin was the genocide of the Native Americans and the repression that they still are living under. And that here in Westborough, because I've lived here for a long time and have many generations of family here, I'm very aware of the history of prejudice in Westborough. One of my relatives sold the property, the Lyman property, to the Catholic diocese so they could build the Catholic Church. When he did that, no one in his Protestant congregation would speak to him for the rest of his life. We had realtors when I was growing up. Bob Brown can attest to this because he helped us as seniors in high school try to combat this. We had systematic prejudice about blacks or Jews moving into Westborough, and the realtors systematically cut them out. And I know a realtor who last year quit her job as a realtor because a house on a certain street in Westborough refused to sell to an Indian family. So we've got a big history of this. We had the Aronson family. There was the only Jewish family in Westborough when the tornado came through. They were all killed. We have systematically refused to recognize that the Aronsons property is what's responsible for us having the high school on it. So we've got a lot of history just right here in Westborough that we need to pay attention to. Also, we all think about Lincoln, how great he was. At one point, Lincoln said, "I'm perfectly happy to continue the practice of slavery as long as we don't add to it." So it wasn't that he was totally against it. He had a lot of ambiguity there. And Jefferson had slaves. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we need to correct in our own understanding of what's going on in our town and in our country. That put aside, my soapbox, I want to thank Charlene Thibault immensely for bringing this to the forefront. This is absolutely fantastic. And thanks to the over 30 citizens who sent us thoughtful letters on email addressing both sides of the issue. I read them all. I'm sure we all did. I read information that was new to me. I heard people's personal, heartfelt experiences of growing up or moving into Westborough, and was pleased to see what to me seemed to be an unprecedented, culturally diverse response to the Board of Selectmen. I was just going by last names and things people said in their letters. I support having a communal discussion on this issue to inform the Board of Selectmen on a final disposition. And if this is a catalyst for a first real local discussion on the endemic and systemic racism in our country and what we can do in our own environment to start to counter this, and then this in itself will be a remarkable outcome. And I can thank Ms. Thibault for getting this going. Vigils and marches are necessary and they're relevant, but they do not necessarily, often by themselves, make change. Community dialogue starts that process, and I'm grateful to those of you on both sides of the Eli Whitney issue for helping us start this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Emery, very much. Ian? Ian, you're on mute.
Thank you. I did
You're
wonderful
welcome.
things to say. No. First of all, thank you, Charlene. I think as everyone said, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you, Selectman Emery and Selectman Hashmi as well. I too have known the seal and known Eli Whitney, but learned about it throughout school. And but this is the first time I really was educated, I guess, on the origin. I didn't know that it was for the 250th town anniversary and that it was designed by high school students. That was brand new to me. And I've seen folks discussing, and some folks that actually were part of that process that have commented on it as well. So I do think it's something that all of us can learn about. I think, Ms. Thibault, your things you brought up on Eli Whitney, I mean, it has been a, I guess, so I say sense of pride, but it's been something that Westborough's been recognized for. And what, sticks in my mind is when I left Westborough to go to college, I went to college down in Florida, and, people, because you're meeting people from across the country, and everyone would say, well, where are you from? And, I'd say, I'd always say I'm from Boston, or I'm from Worcester, because nobody knew where Westborough was. And so I said Westborough, and said, Westborough, isn't that where Eli Whitney was from? So people around the country were educated on it, and I think recognized as the cotton gin, but also recognized as, kind of a father of the Industrial Revolution, all that stuff. So it's something that I think has been cherished in the history of Westborough. But I do think at these times it's something that we have to listen, and I think we've talked about it a lot. We have to listen to what others say and think, and I think Lee, you put it very well in terms of this is a great opportunity, and I think really the next steps that I would like to see us take as a board, and it sounds like others do too, is really to get community involvement, community discussion, public meeting to discuss this and bring this forward. I think while I think Chief Laurie said that October, we have time, whatever. I mean, October, he says we have time. I said that seems close, but I think what you brought up with Mashpee and the research you did there, thanks for doing that, because I think we can follow on that. And it may mean that this may take time. We do have, if we decide to make changes, there's a lot of changes that need to be made. I think we have to be thoughtful in that, and that these things don't happen overnight, and that folks need to be tolerant of that. Folks need to think about change and affecting this change. This is a change that, as we said, this seal was in place for 50 years. If we want to get something for 50 or longer years in terms of a seal that we feel represents Westborough, let's do it right. And I think that could mean that we could even come to vote in October to say we want to change the town seal, but doesn't mean that we have to have a final decision on what that seal is. And maybe we will. People are energized. Let's capitalize on that. So, anyways, enough said from my side. But again, Charlene, thank you for bringing this to the forefront. Thank you for others in the community that have brought stuff. And I think that it's important, as we said, for us to continue to learn, continue to listen, and let's hopefully this is something that really can bring the community together and allow us to move forward as a community. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Selectman Johnson, very much. I did see.
If I may?
Yes, Alan, you're next. Dr. Walsh, I did see your hand up after Selectman Edinburgh, unless it was a matter of procedure.
Marshall, I know that I'm not on the board, and I just would love to be able to take this opportunity to say.
Well, I'm sorry. Sorry, Dr. Walsh. I wanted to recognize Alan. I just didn't know if you were raising your hand as a matter of procedure, given the time. Are you okay? Okay. All right. I'll get to you in a minute. Thanks, Alan. Please.
So, definitely thank you for Charlene for bringing this forward, and thank you, Dr. Hashmi, for a beautiful perspective. I look forward to the transcription being posted on your Facebook page so I can read it, as well as I will certainly listen to it again and take it to heart. And for the other comments, I think the discussion has opened up a lot of interesting facts about the history of the seal and the town. Eli Whitney, I really gravitated to the comment, separate the person from the machine, and that we should be celebrating the person's accomplishments as opposed to the machine and what that symbolizes, because it's a very different, puts a different perspective on it. John Arnold had sent a note pointing out that our current town seal wasn't designed to be a town seal. It was designed to be the front. It was designed to be the seal of the celebration committee for the 250th celebration. It was on the front of a coin, the back of which actually had an image, a drawn image of a Nipmuc Indian, young male, in a natural environment. And it wasn't until, after the celebration that it was then adopted. The front of the coin was adopted as the town seal. As I think about the issue, I agree. Public conversation, public input is important in two places. One, do we want to go forward and redesign the town seal? And secondly, if that decision is made to go forward, then what will be the new seal? And the discussion of, again, going and looking to the students at the high school as a source, as they were 50 years ago, is, I think, a great idea. Putting it in context and bringing it really locally, 2 years ago, for the first time, our town, as part of the strategic planning process, created a vision statement and a mission statement. And that vision statement is that Westborough be a vibrant, inclusive, safe, attractive, connected, engaged community for a lifetime. And so the concept of engagement and welcoming and inclusion is embedded in what we aspire to be. And inclusion, and that sense of inclusion and community, is part of our mission statement as well. And so the question I ask myself is, does our current town seal speak to that mission and what we aspire to be? And I'm not sure you can say yes to that. In fact, I don't think it does, and it's worth reconsideration. Yep, there'll be a process. Public input's absolutely necessary. I think we can come up with imagery and symbolism that represents the town in a way that isn't hurtful or representative of slavery or demeaning of any group of our citizens, past or future. I don't worry about the money. Yes, the seal's on everything. It's on many, many things. And yes, it will take some time and money if we change the seal to change the logos on the police cruisers and the fire trucks. Letterhead, digital printing, it's not so hard anymore. Business cards get reprinted on a periodic basis anyways, right? So all of the logistics of changing the seal, I think, are manageable and can be worked out, and need not be at the forefront here. I think the next step is getting the broader community input and deciding the way forward for our community. And so thank you. And thank you to everyone who sent the messages. I think at this point it numbers well over 40. And the vast majority of those messages are extremely well thought out and personal, and really come from the heart. And also relay those individuals are relaying their opinions on either side in a very respectful and meaningful way. And so that's very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Selectman Edinburgh. Dr. Walsh, you wanted to provide a comment? And I'll add that this is not a public hearing or public forum, but you are part of our meeting, so I'll allow it.
Thank you, and cut me off if you need to. But I just wanted to make a brief comment, and that is I wanted to kind of caution you guys that when two groups are not communicating well, one person says A and another person hears B, and that's a big root of divisiveness in a community. And so if someone is saying, I like technology and innovation, and somebody else is hearing, this is insensitive, it's about slavery and it's about oppression, then to bring this to a larger forum where we have a public discussion and we force people to choose sides, and is this going to invite more protests, more, yes, it helps communication a little bit, but I want to caution you that doing this right now might actually be worse than not doing it right now. So I kind of wanted to plant that seed. The other quick comment I wanted to make was that cotton is very important. Still is, was back then, is now. The cotton gin, I think, improved productivity by like 25-fold. That would be like getting an $8 mask for COVID-19, having it be $200. So a lot of you are wearing cotton masks. This was a huge deal to be able to get this sort of productivity boost, irregardless of the slavery aspect of it. Now, it also contributed to widespread expansion of slavery. So I think that everyone in town would not want to be insensitive to anyone else. But I do want you to weigh the fact that making this a larger issue and then forcing people to decide one way or the other on it might actually increase divisiveness within town.
Thank you very much. So since the board has, Ian, no, okay, I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry. So I'll add some thoughts. First of all, I don't want to be duplicative, so I'll refrain, but there's really nothing that my fellow select board members said that I disagree with. I want to again extend a thank you to Ms. Tebow for a very thoughtful, well-researched presentation that I know this board appreciated, and I'm sure the public did as well, regardless of their personally held views going into this presentation, or maybe some views that have changed, or maybe there's some question marks, little bubbles floating around now. And I think that there's clearly, I'm hearing there's an appetite of this board for public input to a process. I will say personally, I love my friend Alan, who says, don't worry about the inventory and how we have to change things. I think that's very relevant. I appreciate Chief Laurie bringing that up. I think we do need to have an inventory of where the seal is and how much is it going to cost, because ultimately that has to be part of a process. So that's my very practical side. It shouldn't be a barrier to change, regardless of what we were trying to change. I think there has to be purpose in changing something that represents the town, such as the seal, although I would in some ways challenge it. I bet a lot of people until this topic came up didn't even know that we had a town seal or what was on the seal. And Jeff, I appreciate your candidness and kind of being naked and sharing what you thought the seal was, when you first came along, because a lot of people, I'm sure shared similar questions. I always want to be extremely respectful of our First Amendment rights. I think it is critical that people have the ability to express how they feel. I personally try to always do that in a thoughtful manner. And I will tell you that in these days, these recent times, I myself am humbled by presentations like this and the dialogue that is shared. I'm humbled by research that I'm doing and news that I'm, gathering, because even though I love history and have studied a lot of it, I feel like for the majority of my life, Ian, you sort of touched on this, that I probably just took it in, accepted it, and said some of it is terrible and some of it was good and great, but it is what it is and it's history, and I'm part of that moving forward. But these times have made me much more self-reflective, regardless of the views that are being presented, where I'm pausing and internalizing the views that others are expressing and giving that a moment to, while I could never put myself in the shoes of someone of color, inclusive of those groups that Selectman Emery mentioned, or religion, or I think we do ourselves all a favor by listening to new ideas. I mean, the seal, in my opinion, it was established, but that doesn't mean a seal can't change or can't be modified. To me, that, not unlike Eli Whitney's invention, which progressed, I think Dr. Walsh made some great points, which progressed and industrialized several different industries and resulted in great economic gains for many, although not evenly necessarily, but definitely not necessarily. It doesn't mean that that's the only way that we can recognize our current community. And there's a way, I continually to be struck by the positive nature of so many people saying, the town seal doesn't represent Westborough's total history. And by changing the seal, we don't diminish the history. There are different ways to do that through education, et cetera. So anyway, what I'm hearing from the board is, yes, let's have public engagement. I do want to say that how we do that going forward, given that we're still in COVID-19 restrictions about public meetings and all, we'll have to kind of work through some of those details. I know that Christy is already unmuting herself, so I think she probably has a comment, but we'll want to do that in a way that engages the public in a safe way, physically safe way. That probably will be a further discussion with our friends on the Board of Health. But technology has been pretty amazing and our friends so far. So we'll find a way to do that. I think that there's an opportunity to work with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I love that idea. We should probably aim for a time in July for a well-publicized meeting to do that. Christy, do you want to add a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add that there are other boards and committees that have continued to need to hold public hearings, and they just offer the link. They advertise the link out. I think that given these times, I think we would also, once we pick a date, we would also encourage people to provide written comment if they're unable to, as we always do, but if they're unable to attend or unable to, because of technology.
Excellent point. Yes, Ms. Presley, Director of Youth and Family Services, please, and thank you for being patient.
Oh, my pleasure. I honestly, as far as this conversation goes, I just want to introduce myself to Charlene. Charlene, I'm Kara Presley. I'm the chairperson of the town's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I'm also the Director of Youth and Family Services. I'm also a social worker like you. And I appreciate your presentation very much, and I look forward to being in contact with you in the context of moving forward in my role with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So to be continued.
I think this is also a plug. I'm going to go back to our very first item that then Chair Johnson said, was that when we read off opportunities in the community, there's still opportunity for community involvement in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So if you are interested in being involved in that committee and this is sparking your interest, please reach out to our town manager and send her your thoughts. Yes, there are three. Thank you, Lee. There are three positions. So the more the merrier. So, yes, Syed?
Sorry, Kara is on. So I just wanted to, can I speak just for a second?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Kara, I wanted to, again, I used to be on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, but then I was on too many boards and I could barely keep up with the boards that I was on. So I dropped off, but I'm glad that you're on. I'm glad you've revitalized that committee. And I hope that as we come up with our statement, I hope you will contribute and you and your committee will contribute to that statement. So I'm hoping that you will share your ideas and thoughts.
She's nodding
Indeed,
yes.
thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, I think that everyone has had an opportunity to comment. We'll look to, I think, July for a public hearing or meeting where we engage the public on a broad scale. Again, please continue to send your comments. I know all of us are reading them and we take them to heart, as you've already heard here. So with that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is by Ms. Presley, which is a presentation regarding addressing community food insecurity.
Thank you. Thank you for having me to talk about this. Like many of you, feeding people and making sure people have their needs met, their basic needs met, is a passion of mine. In my role as the Director of Youth and Family Services, I also, in the context of this conversation, sit on the town's COVID-19 task force with several of you and have sort of taken a lead on a subgroup of that task force that has specifically addressed the issue of food insecurity in town. The folks who have been working with me on that effort include Julia O'Neill Welch, who is our admin assistant in my department, but also is sort of a specialist as far as resources go in town and is a liaison for our department to the food pantry. With that said, Phil Kittredge, who is the director of the food pantry in town, which is a private nonprofit organization, has been in those conversations, as has Superintendent Amber Bach. So this conversation specifically, or the conversation about food insecurity, started at the very start of the task force. In fact, when Town Manager Christy Williams contacted me about starting this task force, that was the first conversation we had, is we want to really understand the needs of Westborough residents, recognizing that the impact of COVID-19 would be, and certainly has been, that people are struggling to meet their basic needs, food being one of those primary needs. So this has been from the very beginning, starting over 3 months ago. I'm proud to say that I have seen this community really come together to make sure that people are not falling through the cracks, and the way that we have done that in a multitude of ways. Unfortunately, the food pantry was not able to keep its doors open throughout the entirety of this pandemic. They are reopening now, but even while their doors were closed, they were sending gift cards, grocery store gift cards, to anyone who inquired whether they had been a patron of the food pantry or not. And they did have some food in stock, which they provided to the school department to be able to supplement the food programs that the school department had put in place. So this past school year was the first year that the school department had put in their free breakfast program. And so when the schools had to close their doors, Superintendent Bach made the decision to continue that free breakfast program, as well as the free lunch program that was available to students in the school in a remote way. So from the time that the schools closed their doors up until last Friday was the final day of food distribution, the schools have been providing free lunch and breakfast to any families with children. And actually, we're also helping to provide food to those who they learned about who might not have had school children, but they had a need. And then they were getting some supplemental food from the food pantry. They have been, and they actually have continued to make deliveries to people who were unable to make it to the pickup sites at Hastings School and the Westborough High School, where the food was being distributed. Within the school district themselves, I would love for Amber to be here to talk about it, but I think I know enough about it I can represent pretty well, that the school district they themselves did a private fundraiser and used funds that they raised themselves to buy groceries for families. So in addition to the school lunch program and breakfast program, they were doing separate delivery to families throughout the community. In fact, they were able to make enough meals available that they were also able to supplement food to seniors in town. So the senior center has also been involved in this conversation with us about meeting food insecurity needs. So through that combination of factors, I should also add that through the task force, as you know, this information line was established, and SELA has been staffing that phone line. And I would say the vast majority, we've had, I think we're up to 26 calls have come through that line, and probably 3/4 of them have been calls from people who've identified food insecurity as an issue. Those families have then been screened by my department and either forwarded to the schools or to the senior center or handled by my department to make sure the food needs are being met. And we have met those needs again by making sure people are signed up for the food pantry, that they were getting the food cards from the food pantry. Now that the pantry is opening up again, that they are able to get to the food pantry to get food. We were making sure people were connected to the free lunch program. And we were even able to work with some of our charitable organizations in town to supplement additionally by getting grants from those organizations to give people additional food cards and help with food. So it's been a wonderful collaborative effort. Thanks to the info line, people outside of the schools have learned about the help that is available. Now that summer is upon us and the schools have closed, I am confident that we're going to continue to be able to meet the food needs of people in town. The info line will remain open. We are getting calls directly to our office from folks, just mostly through word of mouth. People calling us saying, we heard that you can help and we have a need. So the schools have discontinued, as of last week, their free breakfast and lunch program. However, they have not discontinued their work with the families who were benefiting from that program. The schools have made a concerted effort to make sure that every family who was utilizing that program was given the application to the food pantry and assisted to apply if they had chosen to. And they have been screening those families to make sure they're able to get to the food pantry and get the food that they need from the pantry each week. Amber has made it very clear that she is not going to back the school out of their role in addressing food insecurity until or unless she knows that every single one of those families they were serving through the school year are getting their food needs met through the food pantry. And so that has meant that last week, twice in the month of June, the food pantry opened for food distribution with prepackaged foods. So they put together boxes of food, mostly dry goods, and then gave food cards, supplemental grocery gift cards to each family in their boxes so they could go to the stores and supplement for fresh foods like fruits, vegetables, eggs, milk, that kind of thing. And the school made sure they had staff at each of those distribution dates at the food pantry to assist with language translation, to be a familiar face for families who knew the staff from the school and may not have been familiar with the food pantry, just to assist in the logistics and getting people going. And Amber has said she plans to provide similar support when the food pantry reopens its doors to a more normal shopping experience for patrons. And that's going to happen on July 2nd. So starting on July 2nd, the food pantry will be open for its regular hours of distribution. That is on Tuesdays from 9 to 11:30, they will be open for seniors. And on Thursdays from 9 to 11:30 and 6:30 to 8, they will be open for the general population. They will be guiding people to practice social distancing. So only one person will be allowed to go in the pantry at a time. They will pick out their own food as they always have in the past, and they'll carry that food with them. Phil Kittredge was not able to meet with us for a call this week. So there are a couple of pieces of information that I might not be able to speak to about their plan for reopening next week. But it's my understanding that they are prepared to keep their doors open for longer hours if needed to account for a growing demand that they're anticipating. And Amber and Phil and Julia and I are also in conversations about how do we support the food pantry to expand their efforts as needed if the demand shows, if we see a demand that is greater than what they're able to meet right now. So it's kind of an ongoing process of us figuring out what to do.
Great. Thank you very much, Kara. Alan, you have your hand up.
Yep. So thank you very much for that great summary. And I also want to thank you. I know Superintendent Bach was hesitant to have the work being done within the school department publicized, but it really was amazing. I had the opportunity to volunteer and actually help shop for some of the families that the school was supporting, and the distribution of the volunteers driving boxes and bags of food to people's homes, as well as other essential products that many of us take for granted that they needed. And yes, it was a call out to faculty and staff to fund that program, to provide the money for those groceries, and they stepped up in a major way, and so it's very cool. Part of my question about going forward is one of outreach in two particular areas. Even though the free breakfast and lunch program ends with the school year, as it does every year, right? The people who are eligible to participate in that program are receiving additional per student benefits through the state and through the federal government, through the EBT cards. I believe it comes out to about $25 or $30 a week per student. And that's one component. And the second is there's been an expansion of funding available for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. And so I guess one of my questions is, people who might never think of themselves as qualifying for either of those programs, if they've been laid off, if they have reduced hours, if their pay's been cut, may now qualify for those programs. And I'm wondering if there has been kudos, I don't know, but so I'm asking, has there been? And if not, or there's been some, maybe more outreach to let members of the community know that, in addition to the resources of the food pantry and the nonprofits, and I know St. Luke's has been doing a lot with food insecurity through their social services groups. In the senior center, if there can be some outreach to let people know that these programs do exist, and where you might not have qualified 5 months ago or 3 months ago, you may qualify now.
Yes, great question. So yes, there has been outreach, and there can always be more. So I am open to suggestions, but let me share with you what we have been doing. Shelby has invited me twice to be on Frank and Mary, and I've shared with folks about the work that's being done and the resources available on that show. You may know about the resource list that I have been updating regularly. I updated it last week, and I think that will be posted. If it hasn't been, it will be posted very quickly on the website. There has been a mass mailing to Westborough residents. The card that was mailed to Westborough residents includes information about the COVID info line, as well as how to access the resource list. That resource list, I should specify, especially the most recent version of it, has very specific information about how to apply for SNAP benefits. It also highlights women, infants, and children, the WIC program. It also talks about how to access the food pantry, and gives additional resources about different ways that people can get support with food. And I think I wrote 3 places on that resource list that if you have any questions about how to access these resources or any trouble, just call Youth and Family Services. So people have been doing both, calling the info line and our department for help specifically. Now, all of that said, I should also say that resource list, thanks to support from the Board of Health and the Town Manager's Office, has been translated into 4 different languages. And the most updated version isn't translated, but the version that was translated has much of the same information. And again, if they make an effort to call any of those numbers, they'll get help. Youth and Family Services, as well as the Town Manager's Office and the info line, now have access to live telephonic phone interpretation. So if people call in languages other than English, we can aid them with a third-party interpreter on the phone. So we've made a lot of efforts. I'm still trying to find ways to make sure that resource list is accessible to people who don't have internet access. So they've got the information card, and hopefully they will call the info line if they'd like a hard copy of that resource list, because we can certainly mail them. But I also am open to ideas about how to widely distribute paper copies to corners of the town that might not have such easy access.
Kara, also,
Sorry, go ahead, Christy.
Sorry. Didn't they also send information about the COVID line through the distribution of the food through the school, so that all the families who were receiving also got all the information about additional resources and the COVID line specifically?
Yes, exactly. In fact, the whole resource list was also included in the boxes that were distributed by the food pantry in the most recent distributions.
I'll also add that our senior center and their community outreach, working with Allen Reference organizations like the St. Luke's Community Outreach, have reached out to and I want to assure the public they're very engaged and knowledgeable of those who are unable to get out to go shopping, or may not have the means to purchase adequate nutrition or other supplies. And so I feel confident through my involvement with on the task force that we have done a fantastic job of reaching out and assisting those who need it. I think, Kara, to your point, we can always do more. I think we talked about on the task force about the resource list being available through, maybe now that the library is opening, through their remote pickup. I feel like we had, and if we haven't, I'll throw that out there. If it was just my dream, that maybe that some of those resource lists could be available for pickup there on those tables.
I'll see that the library has copies of all the different languages, as well as the information cards, so that they can indeed distribute those. That's a great idea.
Great. Yes, Ian.
Nothing more to add. I just want to say thank you. This is something that we've talked about a lot as a board, but it just and have been confident in what's been done with this task force. But Kara, to hear you provide all the information here, it just again makes me proud of the community and the town staff, and we're all one community here. But it's great. Thank you for what you're doing, Christy, Shelby, and the rest of that task force. I know there's, as Alan said, there's so many volunteers and people doing the work, but it sounds to me that you are doing all that you can do to make sure that we're kind of reaching out and touching those families that really need the help. So thank you.
And I want to just say, sorry, I just want to say the other thing is, I know sometimes, and I've learned this through working with Kara and the team, that there's a genuine desire for the public to know more and how many people. And I can't emphasize enough the work that's been done and the confidence I have in our town departments. And that even includes our public safety officials, who may be called out to assist in a situation who then would reach out to the senior center or to youth and family services to say, I think this family, could use, a conversation and kind of connecting them in ways that, previously they wouldn't have been connected. But we do that over and over and over again in a really respectful manner for human kind of dignity and respect. So I think we do a great job and should be proud of that work. I also want to add, and Kara, to turn it back to you for one final comment, that the Westborough Food Pantry continues to need donations, and the Westborough Appalachia Service Project is conducting a food drive this week. You can email them for information at Westborough with the OUGH fooddrive@gmail.com. If you just Google the context of Westborough Appalachian Service Project Food Drive Westborough, any of those terms, you'll find their page and a really simple 2-second Google form. Pickup is on Saturday on June 27th. Alan, you have your hand up.
Yes, and also Selectman Hashmi noted in the chat that he wanted to say something. As people look to donate through the food pantry collection coming up this Saturday, I will just ask people to look over the entire list of items. Oftentimes, when we're going through the grocery store, we think of things we like, and we pick up extras of those and drop them in the bin or drop them off. Westborough, as we talked about earlier, is much more culturally diverse, and there are items that are needed on that list that meet the cultural and dietary needs of different communities within Westborough. So feel free to be creative and adventurous in your choice of things that you might pick up at the store and put at the end of your driveway on Saturday.
Lee also wanted to mention through the chat that food donated in the bins at Westborough also goes to our food pantry. So if you're unable to put stuff, at the end of your driveway through that food drive, know that directly goes to benefit the food pantry. And Syed, one final comment from the board. Lee, I'm sorry.
At the grocery stores, Gross Brothers and the Stop and Shop on Lyman Street, not the Stop and Shop on Otis.
Correct. That goes
to
directly.
Northborough. Yeah.
That's correct. Thank you, Lee. Syed?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, one of the memories that is certainly burned into my consciousness is staring at the food at the cafeteria where I worked in the middle of the night, knowing that I couldn't afford the food, even though I was starving and I was employed by the institution. And so food insecurity, it's not about food. It's about so many, the urgency for this issue for me is because it's about everything. It affects your consciousness, and that insecurity that you feel is certainly the insecurity that I felt all those years ago has never left me. And so I can just imagine the impact that it has on the vulnerable and on the young. And I would just point out that a recent poll has shown that 24% of Massachusetts residents have either struggled to provide food for their family or have gotten food from their food bank. And the other thing I would like to say is, because there's this, and I just want to crush this right now, there seems to be this perception that people go to the food bank because they're lazy or they don't have jobs or they don't want to work. John Prine, the singer, once sang, "The scientific nature of the ordinary man is to go out and do the best that he can." And so I would just say, and I want to thank and applaud the efforts of everyone that's doing what they can in this time. And the thing is, I think the efforts that we make now, the residents we will help today will cherish the fact that someone cared, someone bothered. And now more than ever, we need to bind people to our town. And this, by making sure that they don't go hungry, is one way we're going to do that. So like I said, I applaud these efforts, and I think there's an urgency to these efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Hashmi. And thank you, Kara, for coming on and giving of your time this evening. Thank you.
It's my
With that, I think we'll turn it over to what has become a regular part of our program here and meeting, and welcome the Board of Health as part of our joint meeting. So Dr. Walsh.
I want to thank you guys on having us here, and to congratulate you on a successful transition from chair to chair, and welcome, Chair Marshall to the position.
Amazing what can happen in a minute.
So I'd like to, update you guys a little bit in terms of what's going on. I think the biggest news from the state that I heard today was that they've had instituted a policy where they were sponsoring or supporting advanced testing that at a rate that they hadn't done before in relevance to all the protests that were going on, to really make a concerted effort to get more people tested. And what they found was that about 10,000 tests per day went to 17,000 on one of the days, 15,000 on another one of the days. So having a tremendous increase in the amount of testing. And what they found is that the rate of spread of the COVID-19 is such that I think that they're still only getting about 2 to 3% of the people that are tested are actually showing up positive. So these are all really good signs. I think it's saying something about Massachusetts in general, about our willingness to actually wear masks at protests to maintain social distancing. And I do want to encourage anybody listening to continue, if you are going to protest, to wear a mask and try to practice social distancing as much as you can. So with that, I'd like to actually turn it over to either Alan or to Steve to kind of introduce, what's going on more locally here in Westborough in terms of numbers.
Sure. Thank you, Nathan. Things are fairly steady as far as new cases. I have one new case since my report on Friday, no new deaths. So we're kind of, it's the last few weeks, I think we had 3, 2, and 1 for new cases. So we're holding steady as far as not seeing any rise yet, and which is good news. I don't really have a whole lot more to say.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think if you look statewide, the number of new cases and the number of deaths are at levels not seen since late March. And so we're clearly in a much better position than we had been. Obviously, it's been pretty rough throughout much of April and May in the Commonwealth. Even in other parts of the country where we're seeing a significant increase in cases, places like California, Texas, Florida in particular, Arizona also. For the most part, there hasn't been a significant upswing in deaths. And if you look at the country as a whole, the trend in deaths is continuing to be, if you look at a 7-day average, continuing to decline. So it remains to be seen as things open up, whether that will change or whether, there's a lot more testing going on and maybe that accounts for a big part of the surge. But we do know in some of these other parts of the country, they've been seeing increases in their hospitalization rates as well. It's not just a question of picking up people with mild disease. So we have to be vigilant, but the news in Massachusetts is clearly good, or clearly improving, I'll put it that way.
Good, thank you. Is there anything else that we want to try to, we don't have I don't think I have a formal agenda in front of me, so I apologize for that. I'm trying to figure out the things that we actually would like to cover in this meeting, and so if there's pressing issues that people have, if we can bring them forward, then we can.
Well, I just say, excuse me, this is Shelby. I want to give Christy an opportunity to introduce one reason why we are together, which is the agenda item coming up at formally at 7, but we have a few minutes for further dialogue, and that's regarding the beach.
Yeah, and I have a question, Nathan, when we're done. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Syed, you have the floor.
First, and that way, if the beach gets pushed till 7, that still works.
So can I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay. So a couple of things. I just wanted to thank I said this at the town meeting. I just once again want to reiterate just the kind of the work of Steve and members of our Board of Health and town staff with the town meeting. And while I'm always the pessimist on the board, both of my boards, I think the real test for us will come, I guess, in 2 weeks from now. So if 2 weeks from now we don't see a spike, then we could really, I think we can really pat ourselves on the back. There were just a couple of comments or just concerns just based on some stuff I read. The New York Times over the weekend had a kind of a front page article about nursing home dumping residents in this time. So I didn't know if that was happening, or if we've heard about it, if it's worth just pursuing or checking. Like, hey, it was just kind of concerning for me to read. The second is something that I had reached out to Steve and Christy about. And Steve, do you want to talk about the email that actually, sorry, before I get to that email, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. Currently, during this time, are we limiting social gathering to 10 people or less? Is that right? So if you want to invite someone to your house, it's got to be 10 people or less. Is that still
Yeah,
wrong?
yep, that's the guidance, 10 or less.
10 or less, okay. And then can you
Can I?
go ahead?
I just want to correct that slightly. It's 10 or less for individual groups. I don't want to comment on everybody's situation. And you can, if you have a large outdoor space, you have a home on several acres, and you have a group of 8 or 9, and they're socially distanced from another group, that is not beyond the advice. That may be impractical for most people, but I don't want it to be absolute. So,
Okay.
Steve, you concur?
I concur. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thanks, Alan. And then Steve, do you want to address the email that I had forwarded, or
Sure.
the stuff that Ray and I've been
So we got an email from a resident that was concerned. I think she's called the office twice now about social distancing and mask use at the transfer station. And we've kind of talked to Harvey's a little bit about that. And I don't know if the board thinks we should put up signage on that. The face covering Q&A talks about, if you can social distance 6 feet apart, then, the mask isn't required. I'm guessing depending upon when you're down there at the facility, there's probably times where, you can social distance, but if you're there on a Saturday, from, I don't know, I've been there, monitoring from 9:30 to, 3 some days, you probably can't, it'd be tough. So I just wanted to know the board's opinion on whether we should post signage. And the other thing is, and I'll have Ray kind of chime in on this because he's the one that directly talked to Harvey's representatives, whether it's really the attendance job down there to, enforce this. People get quite angry at the dump to begin with, without the whole COVID thing, and having her go around to, confront people for mask usage will just put another layer on this. So, Ray, are you on?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, maybe you want to talk about your discussion with Harvey's.
Yep. So I called the safety officer today. The first call I got was about 2 weeks ago, and this woman gave me the information that she went down there, and she did tell me that she was very vocal about it. That she did drop a couple F-bombs, and she apologized for that. And I told her I'd reach out, so I went down and talked to Kelly, and Kelly, who is the attendant down there, did say that when she tells people, you don't have a dump sticker, they yell and swear at her. So she didn't feel comfortable with the mask, telling people they should be wearing masks. I spoke to the safety officer today, and after I received the second call, and spoke to him directly, and he said if we want to put signs up, there's places we can't put them, which is on any bins because they get moved sometimes twice a day, depending on how full they get. So he said there's place we can't put them. If we want to, he said he's more than willing to put a sign up. There's only a couple places we can put it. And he just didn't feel it was the responsibility of his staff to be going around and telling people, put on your mask, put on your mask. He just felt that was something for the Board of Health. It is our area. That area right in there, he said, is municipal. So it's run by the town. It's kind of not in ownership, but he says the town owns that. That's your area. So he said, if anybody's going to do it, it should be the town. So that's where I left it with him. I had sent an email back. The complainant had emailed me. I emailed her back. She had apologized for being so gruff with me on the phone, and I told her it wasn't a problem. She was actually one of the least amount of people mad at me in a regular day anyways. So I did tell her that it was fine, and I sent her an email back. And then I think after that is when she sent an email to Syed. And I don't know if you got it, Syed, but I did send you an email showing, sending you our conversation.
Yeah, no, Ray, that's great. I just wanted to have a discussion with the board about what's our next move here. I mean, to me, this is a matter of, these emails kind of break my heart because to me, it goes back to, we cannot be policing this. This should be incumbent on our residents to be doing this. I don't want Ray or Aaron or whoever this poor lady is at the dump, telling people to be kind to each other. I mean, that's something that we should be doing. I mean, internally, the residents should be just.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to figure out practical situations we can kind of handle this. I think that trying to have staff at the dump Board of Health is not a practical solution. Maybe one of the things I'll float out there, and you guys can see what you think, is if we were to have people that were to, let's say, report the license plate of somebody that wasn't wearing a mask, if we were to call them up and then say, we notice that people are concerned that you're not wearing a mask while you're down dumping your trash, could you please wear a mask? At least that takes it off of the staff of the people that are at the dump themselves.
My feeling is that a signage is a good move, but at some level, I don't view this as any different than if people are out protesting and you go around and you say, "Can I see your ID? You're not wearing a mask, and we're gonna, alert you." At some level, we have rules in place. They're general guidance, especially in an outdoor situation at Harvey's where you're not near somebody for any extended period of time. At most, you're walking past someone in a very transient fashion. And again, I think we all agree it's not incumbent upon Harvey's. This is a town regulation, town responsibility. And I'm in favor of signage, but I think the idea of license plates is very intrusive, and I think people would get very nervous if they thought, "Gee, whenever I go to Harvey, someone's looking at my car, my license plate." I mean, we've had enough trouble even just doing that for dump stickers, and
Right.
I think we have a stronger case for dump stickers than we do for the masks.
Yeah. If we were to flip this on its head, though, and say that this was a restaurant that was doing takeout business and they had people that were lining up and getting their food and leaving and weren't wearing masks, what would we tell that business? And do we hold ourselves to a different standard?
No, I think it's a great example because I thought of this as well. Suppose you have Dairy Queen, okay, where their sidewalk, if somebody's on the sidewalk at Dairy Queen not wearing a mask, eating their dairy, well, if you're eating their ice cream, what are you going to do? But I mean, you can't eat that while you're wearing a mask. But, what is Dairy Queen's responsibility there? To me, their responsibility is social distancing. They've got those 6-foot markers. It's not clear that, a person working behind the counter at Dairy Queen can effectively monitor and enforce mask wearing, on the other side of that wall. So
I would disagree. They came in here and they actually said they turned away people that weren't wearing masks, that they could not get their order. So I would say
there's a difference there. The difference is they're not wearing masks in the encounter with their staff right at the window. And so there's a protection element of their staff. But if those people, let's say, aren't wearing their masks while they're standing nearby and then they put their mask on to come, I'm not sure that they're monitoring things to that degree. And again, so
there are interactions with the staff. Sometimes people have an air conditioner that they're dropping off, or some steel, or different things where they actually need to talk to the staff. I think that we would like people at the dump to be wearing masks. Is that not the feeling of the board here?
I'm gonna. There are a couple.
Let's Shelby or go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess what I think we talked about all along is I don't know if the right term is, there's sort of this transient engagement of people. You could be walking by on the sidewalk, or maybe you're walking from the recycling area to the conveyor belt, and to me the feeling of the direction of the Board of Health all along has been, those are very distant interactions. It's different if I'm going up to you and asking you a question and I can't maintain that social distancing, but I personally feel like absolutely not on the license plate thing. Signage, sure, to reinforce that message that it applies here too with the transfer station, if we feel that necessary. I mean, I'm amazed that we're still having this conversation, to be honest with you, just that it's an issue. But I think that enforcing it in any way at this point is particularly at the dump. I mean, your interactions are so brief and distant.
I will say, I'm sorry, I know I see a couple people, but just let me say, with respect to the woman there, when people have to ask her questions, they can do that easily at a 6-foot distance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
That part's not hard.
Alan, you had something? The other Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely for signage in setting the expectation, knowing that most of the contact is, transit and not extended. I think that's appropriate. I'll also add, having gone recently, that depending on which way the wind is blowing, wearing your mask and breathing in through it can make it a much more pleasant experience as well. Because there is times odor involved in transfer of waste, and can make it actually more pleasant.
So yeah,
May I?
good. Yeah,
May I?
go ahead.
I go down there at least once a week, and sometimes I go down on Tuesday morning, and there's hardly, maybe not even another person there. Then sometimes it's on Saturday afternoon because I forgot to do something earlier. I've actually never seen anything that disturbed me. People are either socially distancing, walking, and if they didn't have a mask on, if they walked by somebody, it was very quick. It's usually windy, and most of the people were wearing masks. So I don't think it's a problem. Putting a sign up is fine, but I don't think we should spend too much time on this.
I think that's probably the consensus that's going around, is that I think that, at most we should put up some signage that says, do we want to say masks are required, masks are recommended?
Well, I
recommend?
drafted a couple of things here, and I'll read them off, and you tell me which one you like the best, or maybe none of them. I don't know. But how about please wear a face covering when social distancing is not possible, something like that, or social distancing of 6 feet is not possible. Something to, does that sound? I think that's kind of, it's asking, it's nice, it's not like must. And
I think that's phrased pretty well. Syed, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to. I didn't know if Christy had any input that she wanted to share with us. Before. I just thought I'd ask.
I don't. I mean, I know that this is a board health issue, so certainly I'll trust Steve to take care of it.
Okay. All right, go on.
So I'll get those. I'll get a couple signs made. They were happy to put them up. So we'll do that. Again, I kind of echo the feeling with a lot of people here. If you want to maintain 6 feet, I think there's a way to do it down there if you're really intent on doing it. Maybe you could go on different times so it's not as busy. I think even when it's busy, if you kind of time it right, you can find a way to get around people. I think it's kind of like the gauntlet, but you just find a way to do it. So
Syed and Ellen, are you on board with the phrasing that's?
Yeah, I mean, I like the phrase recommended, or something like that. I will say, honestly, I go to the transfer station frequently, and more than once a week. And at times I will say that, I was there actually this afternoon. Very few people were wearing masks. It wasn't very crowded. It sort of wasn't an issue. What I would say is the time is the biggest problem is on Saturdays. If you're there Saturday between 1 and 3, let's say, where the line often goes all the way right out to the road, that's where there's a concern. But for the most part, it's not much of an issue. So I think just a sign with a reminder. I will say this. I think we're going to have more issues like this arise as we continue opening up and people start internalizing, oh, things are better. It's not that big a deal. We haven't had very many cases. And so I'm not encouraging that attitude, but I think it's something that may become more prevalent. And I think you may have seen that in other parts of the country as well. So I think reminders are a good idea, at least until there's a lot more evidence that this is dissipated. We need to continue to socially distance and wear masks when not possible.
Good. Go ahead with that then.
And Steve, sorry, just one other thing. So thank you for taking care of this, and thank you, Ray. Do you think it's worthwhile just putting something on our Facebook page or whatever, or on the town's Facebook page, or hey, just please do this? I mean, I think it's incumbent on the residents. Do you think it's worthwhile doing that?
Well, I mean, we have tons of stuff on there. It kind of gets to be. I think it kind of gets to be all background noise after a while. I mean, we've said it many times that there's all this stuff. I mean, we can, but I can't believe there's anybody out there right now that doesn't know that they should be doing this. Whether they do it or not, that's a whole nother issue.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'd like to pivot at this point to the beaches. I think it's a little after 7. Does that work with you?
Yes,
Marshall?
Yes.
Who's going to be kicking this off? Is this the rec director?
I think it is. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'll just start and then we can kind of go whatever direction it takes us. So
Jen, I'm sorry, could you, just for the benefit of the public, because some folks may not know, could you introduce the members of the commission that are also on the call?
oh, sure. Yep. So we have, I believe, yep, he's here. So our chair, Earl Story, Colleen Dowd, Bill Clausen, Beth Travis, and Brian Kane.
Thank you very much. Welcome,
Yeah, no
everyone.
problem. Sure.
Thank you.
So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, to kind of how we got here. So May 26th, I met with our commission and they voted and made the decision to close the beach for the season, just due to all of the guidelines and restrictions that were going to come into play due to COVID-19. On June 2nd, I came before the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, updated you on all of that. And then on June 3rd, the day after, I did send along some additional information through Christy about how we came to that decision. So really quickly, how we came to that decision, I don't know if I can present here. Sorry, this will just be easier, I think. If this will work. Maybe.
There
Sorry.
you go. Yep, no, it's working.
Or I could just read it off my screen here.
I think the public appreciates the visuals, so take your time.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. It's not slides, but it's, yeah, people can read it if it'll ever load. Here we go. I had this ready, I swear.
I'll accept responsibility. If it was ready at 7, it, my fault, but it took till 7.
Oh, no. I don't know what happened, and then I just sorry.
We could use this time to vote Ian back in as chair.
No, I'm enjoying just
kicking back and relaxing.
You do it.
Just be careful you don't miss a meeting, Ian. I hear that's when they love to reappoint people.
Shelby, I think the rec term is no tags back.
Touche.
This is going incredibly slow. I don't know why. Okay, there we go. Sorry. All right.
There you go, Jen. You're good.
So this is just some bullet points, and it's pretty wordy, but I don't know. People can read through. So
can you make it bigger, Jen? Sorry. Can you just enlarge that? Yeah. Thanks. Sorry to add to your.
No.
Thanks.
I don't present often, as you can tell, via Google Meet or Zoom. But is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so how we kind of got to the decision on closing the beach were the new state guidelines were, we're going to indicate that patrons must be 12 feet apart. I just read the memo that came out on June 6th. That is still the case. So when you got to the beach with your family, you have to be 12 feet apart from another family or group. Guards would need to be remain 6 feet apart. Obviously, unless they were doing some sort of rescue. Bathrooms would need to be cleaned daily, which we do, but the CDC guidelines on cleaning, it's a lot more than what we do now. The lifeguards will go in, they're not scrubbing toilets or anything like that unless they have to. It's really spot cleaning, making sure there's toilet paper, paper towels, things like that. And then the bathrooms would need to be deep cleaned weekly. Bathrooms are only permitted if patrons are able to socially distance. So in the past, we have sold beach passes, family passes, and we've never had a cap on that. We just sell as many as we can. Day passes, same thing. If the beach has never gotten to a point where guards had to, turn off the sale of passes. With the new guidelines, we felt that a safe number of passes that we would be able to sell would be around 40, maybe 50. And on that pass, you could bring up to 6 people. We also discussed, if we didn't sell enough, all of our weekly passes that week, we would come up with a method to sell day passes online. You can see the example here. If we only sold 25 weekly passes, we would have 15 day passes to sell that week, online only. We would not do any on-site transactions. Prices would have to increase. A season pass is currently $55. A day pass is $3. We would increase the prices to $25 for a weekly pass and $5 for a day. We would need more lifeguards than normal. So a normal shift for guards, they rotate through every 15 minutes. So they go from guarding, active guarding. When you're guarding, your eyes are on the water and absolutely nothing else. If someone comes up to you and asks you where the bathrooms are, they aren't even supposed to talk to those people. There are people that sit at the front, the gate, and sell passes. And then there's a guard that's on break. So it's required that you take a break from guarding every 15 minutes to a half hour. So they all rotate through. So for this, we felt we would need 2 guards for parking, checking passes, customer service, a 1 guard on social distance duty, because Red Cross does not allow lifeguards to be the ones, on social distance. Like I just said, if you're guarding, that's it. So we would need someone kind of patrolling the area, helping people if they didn't know, they couldn't find a spot, things like that. 1 guard at the bathrooms to monitor for social distance and to, help clean, after each use or every other use or whatever we had to do. And then 2 to 3 guards guarding, and then 1 guard on their break. So that's how the rotation would work.
Jen, can I just ask a quick question about that? So
Sure.
what was the estimated net increase in a given day of the guard rotation? What you would need versus?
Yep. So we would go from, so we're not doing swim lessons. So on a non-swim lesson day, we would have 4 to 5 guards. And so now we would need 3, 4, 7, I believe. That was our number.
So I have a question about that.
Yeah, sure.
Do all 7 of those still need to be trained lifeguards, or can we be hiring non-lifeguard certified individuals to work the gate, monitor the bathrooms, and help with the social distancing? It seems to me like the number of actual life-saving certified lifeguards could be the same, even though you need additional staff. They don't necessarily need that certification.
Yep, I think we could. My hesitancy on that is that in the event of an emergency, it's always good to have more guards than not. So, for example, last summer or the summer before, I can't remember, a child went missing. So what happens in that instance is they clear the water, and the guards, all of the guards that are on duty, including anyone on break, anyone at the gate, come together and they go into the water and they go through their life-saving scenario. So they're walking through the water together to cover the entire ground. So if we only had 2 or 3 actual guards working in the event someone went missing, now you're down. I don't know how. I'd have to talk to somebody that has more lifeguarding experience, how that would impact an emergency situation. Like if a kid did go missing or there was a drowning, I think just having the experienced staff on site that know what to do in these emergencies is better than not.
To reiterate what Alan was saying is that if, let's say, normally you have 3 or 4 guards, I think Alan was saying you still have 3 or 4 actual certified lifeguards there, that if they have to do the search through the water, you still have 3 to 4 guards there. It's just that the extra people that you have don't have to be certified. They could just be, dealing with the gate. It's just a way to save costs. I think that if you have that many certified lifeguards, I think that everyone here would probably be of the opinion that having a certified lifeguard standing around is probably a good thing to do at a beach. So I don't think we're against that. But if you are having a hard time finding lifeguards, or if that might be a reason why you couldn't open, I think Alan's suggestion is actually
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear that all of the guards. So when I say we have 5 guards on a shift, they're all actual lifeguards. So we would, it would go down to having only 2 or 3 actual guards and then a couple of other people that aren't guards. So now there was a kid missing, you'd only have 3 actual lifeguards able to do any kind of life saving. And God forbid, if it's 2 kids, it really
Yeah.
kind of.
Okay, so I'm not asking that. I'm not asking for
Oh, I'm
that. I'm
sorry.
saying if you normally have five certified lifeguards per shift,
Yeah.
but to do this, you need 8 people working. I'm saying those 3 incremental
Oh,
people
gotcha. Yep.
don't necessarily need to be lifeguards.
Yep.
They can be college students, young adults looking for work. I'm not saying lower the lifeguard staffing.
Yep.
I'm just saying you don't necessarily need to increase it.
Would it affect your 15-minute breaks?
I don't know. Yeah, that we ought to be perfectly honest. I didn't explore what we would do to hiring non-lifeguards. But like you're saying, just keep kind of the same in a number of guards. No, they could just rotate through and it would be fine. And then those other people that weren't ever guarding, they could work longer periods of time. The point is that you don't want people staring at the water for longer than 15 minutes because then that's when accidents happen. So.
Okay. Thank you, Jen, for explaining that. Dr. Walsh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to say that you've thought a lot about this, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So appreciate you kind of explaining the logic. Continue with the information that you had previously provided to folks here.
Yeah. So this actually, Stephen in our office kind of came up with this that I hadn't thought of. So passes have always been available at the gate for both Westborough and Northborough residents. So typically lifeguards will get there for their shift and there'll be people already on the beach and it's no problem. They just say, hey, can I see your ID? It's $3 or do you have a pass? People pay and it's all fine. So this time, if we were to kind of go with this model, we would now have, if those people that were already on the beach didn't have a weekly pass, we would have to ask them to leave. We would only be opening the beach to Westborough residents because we're reducing the capacity. So that just makes the most sense. So I just feel like this is another added stress for our young staff, and our staff are fantastic. I've gotten to know them. They are great kids. This is not any way a negative point towards them. It's just they have an incredible job as it is, and they go through a lot at the gate, kind of dealing with out of town residents that are trying to buy a day pass already that they have to turn away. Kind of now adding in, oh, you don't have a weekly pass, you have to leave, I think is just going to add a lot to their plate, more so than they already have.
I have a question for you. I don't know exactly how the online buying of passes works or how you prove that you bought a pass online. But I've seen various other places do kind of really amazing things. I didn't know if it's something where someone could buy a day pass online, even while they're sitting at the beach if they have like a cell phone.
Yeah, they absolutely could. It would be easy enough if we had enough left over. Right. So if we were sold out for the week and that person was sitting there, that's where I think it could get kind of tricky.
Knowing that some people might buy a weekly pass but not go to the beach every day.
Yep.
Why not? Any thought to not doing weekly passes at all and having everyone on a day pass system?
I just thought it might be easier with an online. So how this would have to work is I'd have to give a list of people that buy a pass to the guards every day, which I guess I could. That would be fine. But then I almost just feel like, is that, I don't want to say too much for people, but you kind of buy your pass for the week, you're good for the week. So now people are going to have to log on every morning, buy their day pass. Just kind of thinking about it, I wasn't sure if that was the best kind of approach. But we certainly could, if we were going to do this, we could switch it to just every day. You have to log on and buy your day pass every single day. And then we could easily, get the guards a list of people. One thing I did think of this, we were going to monitor for quote abuse. So if people were just, right at the beginning bought 6 weeks and we noticed they weren't attending, there was going to be, reaching out to them saying, hey, we noticed you bought these passes. We have a long wait list. Are you planning on coming? Kind of getting and like informing them that, we sometimes have day passes available. Maybe that's a better option. So we did think about kind of people just buying them just for the sake of buying them so they know they had them. But yeah, no, I didn't know if a day pass every day online was the right way to go, but.
So
mean,
I think the goal here was for the rec commission to sort of present kind of, I mean, which I think we're asking some great questions, but I think the rec commission has already voted once, and I understand voted a second time just recently. So if we can allow Jen to kind of get through her presentation and bring us up to speed as to the meeting that they had, I think as recently as yesterday, Jen?
Yep.
Correct? And then we can maybe kind of go back into questions, because I want to be respectful, as we all would, of the votes that our boards and committees have taken, to kind of hear them through. Okay.
Well said. Yeah. Why don't we let Jen get back on track?
Thanks. And just to note too, we did play out so many different scenarios that it's just, this was sort of the final kind of, if we were going to do this, this is how we would do it. So, and just lastly, so lifeguards are hard to find because there's initial upfront costs to lessons and getting certified. So every summer we have just enough to cover the summer. So if a lifeguard or two were to get sick and have to quarantine, there's a potential that we could be understaffed. And Grafton and Hudson are also closing their beaches. I spent a lot of time on the phone with both of those towns, you know, as early as April, just kind of what are we doing? What are you doing? And we were all kind of afraid to pull the trigger first here and say that we were closing. So, and then just the financials, I don't want it to be all about this, but this is, you know, important. The beaches, we tend to lose 8 to 10,000 per summer. This is known. We try every year. We have a goal of how do we close that gap. And we've done some great work by adding some programming and things like that, but it's kind of a known loss. Lifeguards are expensive. So this year, it would be a lot worse. And so we're losing, as you can see, about $12,000 in revenue because we won't be able to have swim lessons. They'll pass us to our neighboring towns or program around the beach. So here's just, and this is, so we stand to lose almost, you know, $39,000 if we were to open. You can see a list of our expenses. Salaries is the biggest thing. And then I did factor in the algae treatment this year, which we are going to pay for anyway, but there's a lot that goes into opening the beach. So that's sort of where we landed. And so I got everyone together last night. We regrouped and discussed again. And they just felt that not much has changed in regards to the disease and the regulations and what we would have to do. And so they voted again last night to just keep their final decision of keeping the beach closed. So I don't know if Earl has anything to say. He's our chair, but that's sort of where we're at. Thank you. So that's that.
It doesn't seem like Earl is saying anything.
Yep.
I have a question.
Earl,
if
you
I
have to
may.
unmute.
Oh,
And Jen, if you could unshare your screen, that would be
Sure,
great.
yep.
Thank you. Yep.
I don't know if the admin would have the ability to help Earl unmute.
Typically, once someone mutes themselves, no one can unmute them.
may I ask a question while we're waiting for Earl?
Yes, go ahead, Lee. Yep.
Jennifer, you shared with us in some format, I can't find it right now, the problems you're having with the people that are essentially breaking in and trespassing right now. You talked about the amount of cleanup you have to do, the toilets being broken into. Could you just relate that so the public hears what problems you're dealing with that cost us money now that the beach is actually formally closed?
Yeah, so we've it's been unfortunate that the amount of trash, it's the parking lot. It's been pretty every Monday that we've gone there, there's just an abundance of trash, and not just water bottles and stuff. This is like Burger King food, you know, alcohol cans, just a lot of stuff. I filled a huge trash bag. The bathrooms are closed at the end of the season, and last season a lock didn't get locked right, and the bathrooms were essentially open, but we turned the water off at the end of the season. The water was turned off, but the beaches were open, and we had a mess in there that we had to clean up. So yeah, hasn't been great. But the beach is closed, and I just worry if we were to, I'm sure we'll talk about it, that if we were to open the gate, I think it would just get worse. But we can discuss. I don't know.
So maybe we can see, Earl, are you still muted, or have you been able to figure
He's
out?
trying. Earl, if you can hear us, I think if you're on an iPad, Alan, can you unmute yourself? Alan Edmund, you had a suggestion?
Yep. So if you're on an iPad, just move your finger down to the bottom of the screen and touch the white bar will come up and you can click the microphone button. It should be red, it'll go to white.
He's having a good time with this.
If you're not on an iPad, you can hit the control key and the D key at the
He
same
just
time.
left. He just left by mistake.
He's going
I
to try
think.
coming back in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I don't think he'd say anything much differently than what I said. And I know Colleen is here too. If you want to say, Colleen, while he's getting back on.
Yeah, I think we didn't make the decision lightly. At the time when we had these discussions in May, the guidance was very unclear from the state on what it would look like, the need to train, significantly up the training that we would need to do for the lifeguards, the cleaning protocols. It just felt like a real uphill battle at the time to safely open the beach. I mean, I listened to the discussion about the dump and the wearing of the masks, and I feel like a month from now, we'd be having a discussion where you could take the word dump and replace it with beach, and you'd be probably fielding questions about that as well. So, at the time we made this decision, it just felt like the right one for based on the information we had at the time, never mind kind of the financial burden that would have gone along with it.
Colleen, you stole my thunder there. I was going to say the same exact thing after just talking about the dump and potentially, writing down license plate numbers or other things, and knowing the reaction we have. And I mean, I can imagine the rec department, the Board of Health, the number of calls people would get about, people look at the rules and they follow and say, well, their towels weren't 12 feet apart. So what are you going to do about that? And, and then I think the other piece is, was brought up, is that, we're dealing with young adults that are down there that they're trained to be lifeguards. That's what we want them to be. We want them to be safe. And I can just imagine the stress that they would be put under by other adults, coming to them and complaining about lack of social distance. I mean, it's just a really difficult time. That the beach is well loved. I know we all know that, but I mean, I personally, when I first heard it, and Christy knows this well, my first reaction, I think the same as others, I said, I can't believe we're closing it. And then when I saw the reasons why and what the commission did, I said, yeah, it unfortunately, it makes sense. Do we like it? People in town like it? No, but I think you've gone through and debated it. Colleen, as you said, I know you guys did not take this lightly, but I think that, well, again, I'd love to see it open. I just think that we're opening ourselves up to another huge can of worms.
Thank you. And go ahead, Jen. And then
no, I was just going to say to Ian's point too, something that we go through with the guards in training. It's a big part of our training that you're going to be dealing with adults, essentially they're kids, that you have to be the authoritative figure, even though that might feel uncomfortable and hard, but you're going to have to be the one that's in charge and hold your ground. It's usually about turning out of town residents away, or if people don't have a pass or they don't know they have to pay or things like that. But this is just going to be another thing where they would have to be enforcing or fielding questions that they might not know the answer to. So it's a lot. And just to, like Colleen said, we did not take this lightly. I have thought about this day in and day out since April. I just want to make that clear. I love this community. I am here and spend more time here sometimes than with my own family. I've gotten to know a lot of people in town. The kids that work for us, I care about them. They don't have a summer job. So it was a very, very very hard decision that I thought, and we all thought, very hard about. I know that you know that. I just want to put out there in the community that this was not easy by any stretch.
Appreciate that, Dr. Oh, I'm sorry, Lee, and then Dr. Ehrlich.
Oh, okay. I absolutely will support any decision or continuing the decision that you folks have made. You're the experts on this. My concern in wanting to have it discussed one more time was this sort of the balance between, do we have control over the beach by opening it, and then you can monitor it, you make sure it's safe, versus absolutely no control, and it could be very unsafe. We could lose a kid or somebody in the pond because we aren't watching them. That it would cost us $38,000 in losses to open it, plus the practicality of trying to start to open it now, probably take a month or so to even get it open. So it seems less and less practical to open it, but I am very concerned about it not being monitored. So I'm wondering if one of the alternatives to keeping it closed is to really do more monitoring, which I guess would have to be our police force, or because the Board of Health can't go and arrest people or something, but we've got to have, I feel like we have to have some mechanism for saying, get out. And after a while, you say that to the people that come the most often, they stop coming. I don't know. I think we have to think about how do we keep it safe closed.
So let's stew on that a little bit, Lee, to your point, Dr. Ehrlich.
So I've heard the sentiments of everyone, and this is not an area of expertise of mine at all. So I just want to, though, make an argument from a different perspective, which is that everything that's been said is absolutely true. There would be hardship. I do think some things could be mitigated. For instance, we've talked about not having the guards be the ones who have to deal with out-of-town people or the checking passes or things like that. Those are functions that do not require you to have certification in water safety or things like that. And so we could potentially offload that responsibility. The concern I have is not that we close it, okay, whatever, it might cost money or whatever. It has to do with what I consider to be an equity issue, that the people who would rely, many people in town have access to swimming pools in one form or another. And it is perhaps the least well-off people who might be disadvantaged by not having access to the beach. And so I want to at least raise that issue. And I'm sure I'm not bringing up something you haven't thought about, but I just would like to perhaps hear more of the discussion about, how, what is it worth to make a service like the beach available as a community service to the town, separate from, all the things that we enjoy about it.
Dr. Ehrlich, I have had that same concern all along and was trying to find what would be middle ground in terms of posting that lifeguards were not there to mitigate. Whoops, Earl, are you on? If he's on, I want to give him. No, okay. To certainly mitigate the town's risk and also to address all the challenges that the Rec Commission has already thought through. And not unlike Ian, I went through that same thing of, oh, wow, this really hurts that we're closing, but then really understanding all the regulations and what it would take and the financial aspect of this, and given our budgets already and financial situation, I certainly support the Recreation Commission's decision. I want to point out, though, that I think we've said that the beach is somewhat accessible. It's certainly accessible to boating, which is under the control of a state and other, I think, authorities at other points along the water. So one of the things we talked about was testing of the water, which also was part of kind of why we wanted to bring this back, because while the beach, is not open, I think there was concern, certainly by myself, that we recognize that the people are going in the water in some form or fashion. And I was concerned that, I know we only test when the beach is open, at least that's my understanding. I'm not sure why we wouldn't continue to test to ensure it's safety. And then, I know from walking around there previously, when there's a bacteria outbreak, the signs go up, don't, your dog shouldn't be going in the water anyway, because it would be off leash. Don't get me started. But signs go up to talk about the hazards of algae or bacteria or what have you. So that certainly is something I think we need to understand, regardless of the decision. Is the water going to be tested? And Christy brought something to my attention earlier, which was that the state guidance really almost, in some ways, sort of discourages multiple, like even trash barrels and kind of additional accessories on the property to really discourage more people from being there. So I think we'd have to also understand, would we be in violation of kind of any executive orders are in place? And the Board of Health would understand that better than I would. I think, Earl, we can hear you. We can't see you yet, but we can hear
Okay,
you.
get
And I
your
see.
butt over here, Earl. Can you hear me? All right, I'm done. Can you hear him?
Yes, we can.
Good. You don't have to see him. You can just hear him.
Okay, Earl, welcome.
Yeah. Sorry for the
That's okay.
the
You're here.
UTS problem. Using too stupid, but whatever. I just want to say, I mean, you've gone over everything that we could, the trash is a big issue down there, and which DPW is great to take care of it for 3 days a week. But when we have, when we have lifeguards on, they take care of it all day long, 7 days a week, and the parking lot, and maintain that. I'm going to put more more containers out, and try to do, a better job at that, because the trash is, people are there all weekend long. DPW works Friday, and they dump the containers on Friday, and then you come back on Monday, and well, the parking lot was the worst mess this year, and this week rather. And the bathrooms are a big problem, I think. And my question is, how can we have porta johns around? Who cleans them? And what's the sanitary part of having a porta john around? Because anyways, I'm just I'm glad that we're I hope that we're going to be able to close it. I'm not glad we're closing the beach, because I know it's not a money maker, but that's not what that the beach has ever been about. It's a nice asset to the town, and it's a beautiful facility down there, and it's just, it's a proud thing that we all like at the rec department. So I just want to say one thing. Jen's done a wonderful job as far as keeping us updated on everything that's going on, and working with Steve, and she just does a great job, and it's such a pleasure to work with her, and she does such a good job for our board. We have a great committee too. So anyways, that's about it for me.
Thank you. I did have one more comment. I appreciate the fact that you guys have already voted on this and kind of come to your decision. I do want to just bring up one thing that I've seen that has worked at other beaches, and that is they use like Jersey barriers or something to block off most of the parking space. And so that if you reduce the parking from, its full capacity down to, in our case, like maybe 20% capacity or something like that, would that make it so that then there are just less cars, less families there? You might not need to enforce any of the social distancing just because there's less people that could actually get there.
Dr. Walsh, you have pickleball and tennis down there too that share that parking lot.
Right. And then you're going to have Chauncey Street, that piece of property on Chauncey Street, they're all going to park there. So where Lynch did their, put all their equipment when they were doing Route 9. So it's quite an area they're parked there. So people will go over there and park. I don't see like Shelby said, the parking, in the morning, there's a lot of people there playing pickleball, and they're using social distancing, and they're doing a good job. But the courts are pretty active.
The other piece that I would add to Dr. Ehrlich's point around those who may use the beach more frequently is Jen has already pointed out that in order to even have this be less of a deficit kind of arrangement, that the cost of beach passes would have to go up. And so those that are using the beach might be further, if you will, disadvantaged because of the cost of a beach pass. And so that,
It would only have to go up if we want to have a better balanced budget.
no, I understand that. I just,
Yeah.
obviously that would have to be taken into consideration, but I trust that the recreation, that was what factored into their
do you have
decision.
a cost or what it would be to run the services that we're providing now while the beach is closed? I mean, we are still cleaning the bathrooms. It sounds like we're still emptying the trash. We're still doing some minimal stuff anyway. And so is that significant? Is that a non-significant amount of money?
I think that the point is that if we are going to open the beach, we need to manage the beach under the state's guidelines. And so that is what the Recreation Commission took into account, is how could they manage the beach following the state's guidelines. And that was something that they, and with regret, I think, feel like that's not something that we're able to do this summer. And so we can't sort of partially manage the beach. We either open it and manage it fully, or we close it, and that's our decision.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is I do think it's important to separate the two issues. One is the logistical things that Christy just alluded to, and the other is the fiscal aspect. And if it was only, well, it'll be a fiscal hit, then you're having a completely different type of discussion as opposed to all the other things. So I'm ignoring the money aspect for the time being and focus just on the logistical aspects, because there's always ways of thinking creatively about where you could help fund things from.
Agree.
So back to that, in I think at one of the prior selectmen meetings when we were discussing this issue, we had mentioned that there were several options. One is the beach is open. One is that the beach is, no lifeguard on duty. And the other was that we have a no trespassing police take notice, right? And that we had kind of those three levels that we had discussed that we could kind of post for the beach. Today, it sounds like what we're hearing is that that middle one is no longer an option, where we're not going to partially manage the beach, and that we're getting this feeling that it has to either be the beach is closed and that police need to take notice it's no trespassing and have it really shut down, or we have it open. And I don't know, maybe I'm mishearing what people are saying, but that was kind of what I was hearing, is that people wanted it fully closed because they couldn't partially manage it. So maybe we can get some comments on that.
I guess my comment, we talked about this the last time, is that the beach is officially closed right now. It would have been in a normal summer, the beach would be officially closed. Right now, we would open it, next
This
week?
week, like right now, they'd be like right around opening day. Yeah.
Right. But we've had people on the beach since May.
April. Yeah.
Yeah, we had nice weather. That's always happened in town. The beach was packed today. The beach is closed as posted, the gate is locked, but we have no trespassing signs. But from an equity or whatever, we've allowed folks on the beach, but we've everything posted that says that the beach is closed and there's no lifeguards on duty. Likewise, I was over on the property. I know Earl's there every single day, but there were people at the state hospital beach today that were swimming in the water at the state hospital beach. There are people that go over to the dog beach and are in the water at the dog beach. There are boaters, kayakers, all that stuff. So I guess, Dr. Walsh, your thing, I think it's a closed or an open. I guess the question I have is, and this is something that Christy provided us too, is I think where does the authority lie? I mean, so the Board of Health, I think, can say it's safe if you follow these procedures to open the beach. But I guess the question is, can the Board of Health order the Recreation Commission to open the beach? I don't think so.
I do not believe we have that authority, and I don't think we have that authority.
Selectmen has the authority to do that either. Maybe we do, but I mean, again, that's we have a Recreation Commission for a reason. So I think, to me, they've done the work. It's not through some nefarious reasoning that they're closing the beach. I mean, I think it stinks. I think we've all said that. I mean, I think it stinks. We'd love to have it open. I think the belief is that to adhere to the guidelines that are there to fully open it and ensure that we have staffing and the proper, protocols in place, that sounds to me the decision was made that the commission felt like that just was not something that they could support.
So I would like to chime in from a health perspective, and that I think that an unmanaged beach that we know people are actively going to is worse than a actively managed beach. So if it means that the town needs to find someone who can be responsible at the beach to tell people that they have to social distance, it's the same thing that we would tell a restaurant, that you have to find somebody that can, follow the guidelines. Having the beach closed is, but in a way that you allow people to go there and knowingly allow people to go there, that's a bigger health risk than either of the two options of completely closing it and having the police go and, arrest people for trespassing, or having the beach open. So in the rec department and the selectmen, you guys get to make the decision about what to do. From my personal belief, I think that it is safer to have the beach open than to have the beach not open.
When you say open, Dr. Walsh, I presume you're saying, but I shouldn't presume, that you're saying under the full state mandated guidelines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean by open.
So Jennifer, was the real decision to close it that you couldn't afford to staff it the way it would have to be staffed, or you couldn't find enough people, or you couldn't train them fast enough? Because we could follow the state guidelines. It would just cost us money, and it would take time to set that up, but we could follow them.
Right. And we could, and we had enough staff, just enough staff to do it. It just was going to be a much different beach season than we are used to. And like we've talked about, these kids are fantastic. They are amazing, but they have an incredible job as it is lifeguarding. But now to add on, hey, you have to social distance. Hey, someone's not wearing their mask over there. Hey, someone's too close to me. On top of all the other customer service of, oh, now you need a pass. What do you mean I need a pass? I used to be able to buy it here at the gate. On top of the normal stuff of no, we don't allow Hopkinton residents in. No, you're from Marlborough, you can't come. So it was, you peeled back the layers, it was going to be an incredible undertaking that we just felt we did not want to put on these 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, essentially.
Right.
On
But there is
top
an alternative to that, though, as Dr. Ehrlich has mentioned, to not have it be their responsibility.
So yeah, I guess hiring almost adults. I don't know if we would be able to hire, people with experience that, typically our summer staff are high school and college kids all across the board, whether you are at a basketball camp, an art camp, or whatever. It's high school and college kids. We don't have many, quote, adults that work for us. Yep.
I would like to point out, according to the community advocate, Marlborough is opening their Memorial Beach, but feels it's necessary that there will be a police detail,
right,
to deal with the enforcement of entry and passes and social distancing. And that's not I think that makes it very, very expensive.
Yes.
Very expensive, but it also sets a very different tone for people going to the beach, right? So
especially in what we're going through today, I think putting policemen to enforce things at the beach does not feel like what I think we want to be doing in Westborough right now.
And I would agree with that.
So I have a question still remaining out there regarding water testing.
Sure, I can chime in. So we haven't been because, just for the reason that the beach isn't open. I'm sure we could set it up and I could, we could start on Monday. I'm positive of it, but it's a matter of, okay, so now we've taken ownership of that. Obviously, I have no doubts that I think in the 23 years I've been here, I think we've shut the beach down maybe once or twice because of bacteria problems. So typically it's not a bacteria problem there. So I'm very confident that, right now there's probably not a problem, but I have no data for it. But we could probably start testing Monday. I guess I guess the question is, when do we stop testing? Typically, we stop testing mid-August when the beach is closed, and there's still people out there. So it's something we could talk about later. But are we just going to test until it gets cold and there's nobody else going? If we're going to keep it closed and let people just kind of go on, I mean, so that's not a deal breaker either way. It's just a matter of something we have to discuss later on. But we could do it. There's a little bit of logistical stuff with the town hall being closed, how to get the sample to the people, but we'll work that out if that's what you think we should be doing.
Okay, thank you. Colleen?
Yeah, Shelby, one thing that I didn't appreciate until I got a lot of detail around how the beach is run is that that testing is of a very small area, right? And so when Ian talks about people swimming in other areas of the lake, the testing doesn't really apply there. And then there was also some concern we talked about as a commission around the mixed messaging that it sends of like you're closed but you're testing. And is that,
Yeah, that was my concern too. I mean, if we had an exceedance, we would post no swimming, but are people now in the habit of saying, well, the beach is closed, are they just posting? I mean, it's kind of like.
So people were swimming there yesterday and there was a post that said, do not swim because the water had been treated for weeds.
So.
Good point. Thank you.
I can tell you this much. I've gotten calls the last couple of days about the water quality, whether we're testing or not. So people are wondering what we're doing, if anything, about it.
And we sort of realize that is because there's 3 separate and distinct programs that are run that can be interchangeably called testing. And certainly we're trying to be mindful of the wording that we use when we talk about each of those programs going forward.
Shelby?
Yes, Mr. Story.
Can I add something here?
Yep, please.
This has been an awful thing, the pandemic and what everybody's gone through, and every family's had a little touch of something here and whatever. But, when in the just of things, weddings haven't been able to be performed, funerals, loved ones that are in nursing homes that you can't go see, kids' graduations and stuff. When you put the beach on that chart, that's pretty well low down the line as far as I'm concerned. We're making such a big deal out of this. I just don't see it. And Dr. Ehrlichman, you say the money isn't a big thing. Well, for the rec department, it is a big thing because we didn't get any income this year. We gave back $60,000 in summer programs, and we spend a lot of money, and we love doing all the programs we can. But to take another hit here, it is a lot of money. It is a big thing, So I just think that in the realm of things, the beach isn't that big a deal on the list of what's going on with the pandemic and what the inconvenience the pandemic has done for people. So that's just my feeling. Personal feeling.
Thank you all. Dr. Ehrlich and then Lee.
Yeah. So, I would certainly agree that the beach is not on the same order of concern as the other things that you mentioned. But at the same time, we are in a reopening. We are trying to return people to a degree of normalcy for people who have already sacrificed a lot. And I think that this has value that is not necessarily in comparison to these other things, but shouldn't be disregarded. When I said about the money, the point was not that the money is irrelevant, okay, or it's not a big deal. It's that it's a separate problem. And so if the primary driver for closing the beach was financial, then let's have a conversation about that. Okay, and then we can decide, is everyone in agreement that we just can't afford that? Or if it's the other issues that Jen had raised that were many logistical, then we have a conversation of that. And I'm trying to separate the two problems so that whatever problem solving takes place is trying to address the key issue. And if you're going to say they're both key issues, well, then my advice is take them one at a time.
Thank you. Lee?
Thank you. I appreciate what Dr. Ehrlich is saying, and I appreciate what Earl is saying, but to me, the main issue is, are we equitable in the resources we're giving our community? And I think that this is an inequity. I think more people with fewer resources use Lake Chauncey, because why would you? If you have a swimming pool available to you, you probably wouldn't even go there. Or if you have a summer home, you can go drive down to the Cape. This is the only place in Westborough that is relatively free and affordable to swim in. I think it's our sort of moral duty to just look at this as a moral issue. And if it costs the town money, we spend a lot of money on all kinds of things. To me, it would be money well spent at a time when I think most of the people that are going there do not have other relief from all the other horrible things that Earl mentioned. They couldn't see their loved ones, they couldn't have weddings, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. So we're just depriving them of one more thing that is actually within our power to provide. All we have to do is say, Recreation Department, don't worry about the funding, you do your job, manage it the way you should, and the Board of Health, you manage it the way you should. I'm terribly worried that if we do this middle thing, we just let people go there and we don't monitor it, there will be a death in that pond this year, and that'll be our problem. I feel passionately about it.
Thank you, Lee. I think, I guess I don't disagree with you, Lee. I just worry about less about the financial piece of it. And I appreciate Dr. Ehrlich separating those 2 points of discussion. But I would say from a practical perspective, Jen from the beginning has said, when they staff, they're just sort of at exactly what they need without any, guards getting sick, et cetera, et cetera. And even if we were to hire some non-guards to get to the 8 or 9 people that you need, I'm not sure right now in July because that she could even find guards to staff the beach in a way that would allow for time off. And again, not my call. Jen knows this better than I do, but I do agree that, if it's, my sense is it's probably, it's too late, and that window is to staff up for, 6 weeks. Because kids are going to go back to school even earlier than they went last year. I mean, some schools are going back second week in August, if they're going back, granted. But many of them are going back second week in August. So now you're hiring people for, 4.5 weeks.
I did reach out to the guards yesterday and asked if anyone, on the off chance that we were going to open, would they be available? I only got one response. But I mean, that could be a few things. The kids sometimes aren't great on email, whatever, but it was interesting that only one of them, and she was around, but she had picked up a babysitting job, but she was around, but I only got one response. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could get enough guards at this point. I would certainly try if that's what people felt like we should be doing. But yeah, there is an open waterfront test or training that needs to be done every year. So I'd have to schedule that. I do like to do a good 2 hours with them just to kind of go over everything, refresh. They need a day to get the ropes in the water, get the beach set up. So it would be a task, but if, I could do it, it would just be a very different looking summer. And I think, and to lead to your point, I agree. I think that, the people that do use the beach don't have Cape houses and pools and all that. I just worry now too that the prices, it's gonna almost deter people from coming because now they just simply won't be able to afford it. That's just my thought.
If an out of the box thought, might it be possible to contact some of the private community pools? I mean, we were talking about, having 40 passes per day for the beach in a limited number of people per pass. Any thought to maybe seeing if some of the community pools might be willing to, let the rec department charge a fee and pay a fee to have guests? We've got 2 fitness facilities with swimming pools that have guest fees for people who aren't members. Might they be willing to, the Y even willing to have some sort of guest pass system that could be facilitated through the rec department so that people could afford to go to a pool for a day, given that the beach is closed.
I don't know what kind of regulations the pools are under for amount of people they're allowed to have, but Steve, while we're talking.
Yeah, I was going to chime in. The pools have limited capacity as it is under the regulations, so they're limited on how many people they can have. They can't be at full capacity either. So I don't know. Again, might be worth looking into, but it might be tough because even their membership is probably going to be somewhat limited, especially on peak days and usage, that sort of thing.
I think it's an interesting interesting conversation to explore. I know the Y had specifically reached out to us as a community to say how can they help. That may be a way in which they can help. I'm not suggesting 40 passes from them, but there may be some opportunity. It's a good idea, Alan.
So Steve, as we're talking about the beach and testing, if it sounds like we go to this option where we are not police take notice, but also not in a fully open capacity, I would recommend that we actually do test the water, especially if, let's say, the bathrooms are closed, and what we're testing for, I believe, is like fecal coliform material. There is an increased chance that we could have contamination in the beach if the bathrooms are closed and people are kind of using the beach in this illegal fashion. So I would recommend that you test it, even if it is in that closed or hybrid state, if we think people are there. I'd rather know and post, and if people decide to read the sign about, we treat the weeds or there's a, high bacterial account and they still use it anyway, I'd just rather know and have posted it.
Will do. I'm sure we'll be able to get our first test on Monday, so we'll start the program up.
It's a good point, Nathan. I hadn't thought of that. Sobering thought.
So
Dr.
can we
Ross?
come to a solution on this? We've been discussing this for an hour.
So Syed, I was going to make a closing point, if that's okay, which is, again, it's not the role of the Board of Health to tell you whether to be open or not. I think we've given you some feedback, and it's as much as representatives of the community as anything else. And whatever you, as the rec commission, decide, you decide, and that's that. So, and I do agree with what Nathan said about the testing regardless. So I don't want you to feel that there's any sense of pressure from other boards. I think we're raising questions that ought to be aired in public, and you've heard them, you've heard our rationale, and whatever you decide, you have expertise that I certainly lack, and I think most of the other people on the call, are not as well versed in these issues. So I just wanted to close with that.
Thank you, Dr. Ork. Well said.
I think there's a lot of agreement. Yes, I think that our role is mostly to advise about the health and safety, not about the logistics of running it. And if you can't logistically run it, then the best option is to not try to do it in a way that you can't.
Okay, well, it sounds like Dr. Walsh, we've wrapped up that part of the conversation. I want to thank Jen and the entire rec commission for being on. Really appreciate your input and recognize how difficult all of this has been on you. So, and all the good that you do. So, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Dr. Walsh, is there anything else from, I don't think we had anything else unless you
I don't have
from,
anything. A quick check with Alan Ehrlich or Syed would be useful.
We actually had one more thing. We were going to talk about, now that town meeting and elections are over, if we were going to continue to meet weekly.
My personal feeling is that we might not need to at this point. I think with the direction that the numbers have been going, we could certainly think about scaling back.
Do you just want to wait for the 2-week mark from the town meeting?
I think it might make sense to actually skip a week and meet in 2 weeks. We'll continue to issue the reports weekly to update the Board of Selectmen, but I would agree that weekly meetings, I think we have, especially with tonight's meeting, I think we've tackled most of the outstanding issues of substance that, has been coming before the two boards.
Yeah, so if that's acceptable to you, Chair Marshall, I think that we'll try to meet back with you in a joint session in 2 weeks. And if need be, maybe we can either go back to 1 week or keep it 2 weeks, or, adjust it as we see fit at that point.
I'm seeing nods, I think, from the Board of Selectmen. Does consensus? Yes. So we would reconvene on the 7th. Is that correct? Okay.
And I just wanted to add that, sort of in the same spirit of things kind of ramping down a little bit, we talked also about not doing weekly code red calls. And so we just want to be clear about that. One of the things that we always try to preserve code red for real public safety emergencies. The intent of that is really, if there's a gas leak somewhere or whatever, we can target an area and let people know about an emergency. And what we don't want is people to sort of become desensitized to these, thinking it's just sort of a community service update. And so I think that, sort of following along on why we don't need to meet weekly, we're also not going to be doing code reds weekly, because we don't want people to not sort of view that call as something that they need to pay attention to.
I would support that as well.
My only concern in just stopping it is, but I totally agree with you, is that there's sort of no closure. So if there is anything that we need to wrap up, and again, that's the key, is there anything relevant that we need to share with the community, and then convey that, you will no longer be receiving these, and explaining exactly what you just did, Christy, I think is important, kind of closing the loop for the community.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's fine.
Okay. All right. Dr. Walsh, are you all set?
I believe that we are, yes.
Lucky you.
It sounds like you have still a full agenda. I don't envy you. Do I have a motion to wrap up the Board of Health meeting?
I move the Board of Health meeting be adjourned.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Sayed Hashmi seconds.
We'll do it by roll call. Dr. Hashmi?
Yes.
Dr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Dr. Walsh, yes.
Great. Thank you so much, as always.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Dealing with us for an hour.
No, good, healthy conversation that we all need to have. Great. Okay. So for those that are watching, we had previously covered agenda items number 8 and 9. And so we are now on number 10, which is the town manager performance review and contract. And I'm going to turn it over to Selectman Johnson.
Make sure I come off mute. Thank you, Chair Marshall. So this is unique for people watching on the phone, but basically this is directed to our town manager. So Christy, we're pleased to provide you with a summary of your evaluation by the Board of Selectmen for fiscal year 2020, which is July 1st, 2019 to present. And we'd like to acknowledge and thank you for the document detailing accomplishments and activities that occurred during the review period that you provided to assist board members in preparing their evaluations. And as you know, the board evaluated your performance in 6 general managerial categories. Those 6 categories were 1, board support and relations, 2, financial management, 3, personnel management, organizational leadership, 4, community leadership, public relations, 5, town operations and infrastructure, and 6, personal and professional, for individual qualities and professional skills and status. Each of those categories contain from 4 to 7 statements, each of which describes a behavior standard in that category. And the board used the following 4-point scale to evaluate your performance relative to 36 different standards. 1 equaled improvement needed, 2 equaled meets job standards, 3 equaled exceeds job standards, and 4 equals outstanding. And then we did have I said 4-point rating scale. There was a 5th in there that was NO, which was basically not observed. So 4 points and then a letter grade, I guess. So from the review, the highest aggregate average score by category was a 3.3 out of 4. And that was in 3 categories. So board support and relations, personnel management, organizational leadership, and individual qualities, professional skills, and status. Financial management, community leadership, public relations had scores of 3.2 and 3.0 respectively. And then the overall score for the town operations infrastructure category was 2.9. So notably, the board evaluated your performance as exceeding job standards in 5 of the 6 categories. And within categories, the performance criteria receiving the highest ratings were demonstrated integrity and loyalty to the town, and presents budget information in a manner that promotes full understanding of the issues and needs, both of those receiving average scores of 3.6. And then promotes training and development opportunities for employees at all levels of the organization, received an average score of 3.7. In addition to those numerical ratings cited above, individual selectmen were provided the opportunity to include written comments regarding your performance as town manager over the past year. And all members of the board provided comments. These comments were overwhelmingly positive, and combined with the composite ratings across the 6 categories noted above, reflect the collective judgment of the board that your first year serving as Westborough's town manager has indeed been a successful one. You've demonstrated an ability to lead the town with confidence and humility, and demonstrated sound fiscal management skills, and are dedicated to fostering a team environment. And I would note that through those categories, there are, as always, things to note as areas of improvement. There's discussion that the vice chair and the chair had with the town manager to talk through that stuff. But I think overall, a very positive tremendous review. We're very happy with the job as a board that you've done this past year, and we look forward to many more. So thank you.
Thank you. I didn't expect a pandemic in my first year, but we're good.
Okay. Ian, do you want to, are there any other questions or?
I would say actually too, just provided before we get the comments that we will be posting kind of what I read, and the review will be posted. It is public record, so folks can see it. That will be out there by tomorrow for folks to see if anybody's looking. So lucky Christy.
I know. I was going to say it's. I think folks have to. I hope folks do read the document. I want to thank all members of the board for participating. I want to thank. This is, well, certainly in my tenure, the first time we've done this type of. We've done other evaluations, but this type of evaluation, I think it was really thorough and thoughtful, and there was great participation by the town manager. Obviously providing input to our own evaluation, as well as department heads in kind of giving their feedback, and that kind of 360 view I think was very helpful. I want to thank our assistant town manager for all of her work in keeping the process online and keeping us focused and meeting deadlines. So thank you very much, Kim. You did that with kindness, even for some of us that were like typing to the last moment. I guess Lee, Syed, Alan, any other comments that you'd like to make as to process or that Ian didn't already cover?
I think he covered it very nicely. I think it was a good process. I really appreciated what Christy wrote herself. It was very, I thought, honest, objective, and well represented her work. She didn't inflate anything. She's done a tremendous amount of work in this year, as well as when she was assistant town manager. I feel like we have, with her help, put together a stellar leadership team that wouldn't have happened in the same way without the input she's given us. So we're working with a great group of people, and I had very positive things to say in every aspect of her evaluation, and look forward to working with her till I'm not a selectman anymore.
Alan?
So Lee, you'll be working with her forever. I want to add, I thought the process was fabulous. not just getting to read the information Christy provided us, which I agree was extremely balanced and reflective, and very helpful, but also even the definition of the categories and the breadth and sort of the metrics that we were using. I look at this last year, and Christy made a comment. Yet, of course, a pandemic in the first year. That is true. That it's not in the How to Be a Town Manager guide. What to do with the pandemic, and yet I look at the relationship among the department heads, across the management team of the town, from the town manager, assistant town manager, through the whole leadership team, and sort of the culture that's the cooperative culture that's been built. And I proudly point out to people that we were the first town that had a comprehensive plan for dealing with COVID-19, where every single department published something on how they were going to operate and continue serving the public. We were the first town to stand up and say we have a continuing of operations plan for every department. Should town staff get sick or need to be quarantined, how do we deal with that, and what is that going to look like, and how are we going to serve the community we're in? And I think that oftentimes, and we don't have problems that we've heard about from other towns. We heard at a prior joint meeting with the Board of Health about how in other towns, the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen and the police department are fighting about how to respond and what to do. And I think that comes from the leadership and the culture and the expectation set. And for that, I'm very grateful and very proud. So thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Hashmi, anything that you'd like to add?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, great. Again, Chris, I want to thank you. I think echoing all the comments of the members here and what folks will have an opportunity to read in the evaluation process. You really have done a great job. And I think what I personally respect most of all is that we may not always agree, but we have thoughtful discussions, and you always are advocating in the best interest of the town, and with broad vision. So thank you. So I think we have another item under this agenda, and that is.
Do you need a motion?
Okay, Lee, you want to make it?
Yep,
Sure, I will.
Go ahead, Lee. Thanks.
I move pursuant to Section 2C of the employment agreement between the town of Westborough and Christy Williams, that the town extend the contract for one additional year, thereby extending the term end date to June 30, 2023, and further to amend Section 6A salary to include language as provided by town council that increases the town manager's salary for fiscal 2023 by the same percentage increase that is received by non-union employees of the town for fiscal year 2023.
I second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
I think just for the community, just to bring out that one of the things that when we negotiated the town manager's contract, we did, as typical, negotiate a 3-year contract with two, and I apologize for my dog barking in the background. Our friends are going by, so I apologize. But part of what was negotiated in the contract that Selectman Emery brought up in this Section 2C was the ability for mutually agreed upon extensions of the contract for 2 1-year additional terms. So this is the first 1-year additional term agreed upon by the board and by the town manager to move this forward. So thank you. Thank you to the town manager for agreeing to extend the contract, and thank you to the board. That's something that, based on the review, as you heard, that we were excited to do as well.
Okay, without seeing any further discussion, we'll move to a vote.
Did we get a second?
Yes, Alan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Lee. Selectman Emery.
Yes.
Selectman Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi.
Yes.
Selectman Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes. That's 5-0. Congratulations, Christy. Nicely done.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, and tell me
Nope.
that.
No apologies.
But you mentioned it, but I do want to just say to our assistant town manager, I mean, she did a lot of the heavy lifting to really help us out here. She looked at best practices, looked at what others do, and I really do think this is a, and I've heard it from other board members that what we did with the town manager kind of was the guinea pig, but something that we looked at and really wanted to do a robust process and a robust question that we can use hopefully for other department heads. So thank you to Kim for the work you did on this. It was a lot of work and much appreciated. So thank you.
All right, she's thanking us on mute. Actually, I know I was supposed to snap or do hands or something. I don't know what the new wave is here, or maybe do a wave. I don't know. Okay, well, with that, and thank you, Ian, for your leadership of the process as well. So certainly want to acknowledge that. Okay, I believe we are at the place, speaking of which, to hear from our town manager. Take it away.
Sure. So a lot of what's been going on lately was focused on town meeting and the budget. So obviously we had town meeting on Saturday, which went very well. And, we're going to continue to monitor the state budget and also evaluate the capital needs of the town, since we did defer a lot of those, a lot of that replacement and equipment to the October town meeting. One of the things that we've received some questions about is grants and COVID grants that are available to the community. The town does continue to pursue CARES Act and FEMA money. You'll recall that at a recent meeting, we actually talked about who could sign for that. So previously the chair did, and the board actually delegated the town manager to be able to do that on behalf of the board. So we'll continue to work through that. This isn't actually in the report, but in the very, very beginning, I think the day after we initially met with the 3 boards on March 12th, we got together with the public health director and the fire chief, and we applied for a grant, which the health department received and was able to use during this time. The CARES Act money and FEMA money is separate, but we're able to submit COVID-19 expenses. I think that's something I want to be very clear about, is that right now these grants are reimbursable. And so to date, we've received $54,000 as a reimbursement, but we know that there'll be additional costs going forward. We also know that at the federal level, they're looking at potentially allowing us to use that money for revenue shortfalls, which we've been talking a lot about lately. However, with schools reopening sort of being up in the air and a very big question mark in terms of cost, it might be that money that's delegated to Westborough would be used for those types of expenses. So working very closely, I want to thank our finance director who's really taken the lead on this, working very closely with both our chiefs, the health department and the school department, to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity. And then the additional information I have here from the departments, the planning department, Belknap Street, which that article obviously passed at town meeting, but they have been working on the A&R plan, which created those 3 lots that we saw at town meeting. They're working on intersection improvement at Mount Pleasant and Deerslayer Lane, and they continue to work on the master plan. So even though we had Lester Hensley come on and say that we were going to sort of take a pause, the subcommittees are continuing to work on the master plan. Youth and Family Services, you did hear from Kara Presley tonight. They're very busy, certainly working with the task force, and also being very representative on subcommittees. So in addition to working on the food insecurity group, they also worked on creating a community held donation fund. They continue to update the resource list, which I think is a really valuable asset to the community, which we posted on Facebook as it gets updated. And then they're able to triage the calls through the COVID information line. So thank you to Sela for all the work she does in making sure that those calls get to the right people. And that's something that we'll certainly keep open, obviously going forward, even though some of the other stuff we talked about tonight are kind of ramping down. One of the things that we've talked about too is the interface referral service that we do through the Youth and Family Services. And so has the update that we have is that there are a number of cases since we began, which was about a year ago, is we've had 65 cases. And so, that's something that is available to the whole community, and we hope people will continue to take advantage of. And then we're very excited for the library. We're very excited to welcome them back for curbside pickup, which started on June 15th. And certainly they continue to do a lot of things online as well, so that they're able to reach out to the community. Their assistant director actually just was elected one of the 2 co-chairs of the Massachusetts Library Association's leadership and management section last week. And then she also received word that she was accepted into the Suffolk MMA certificate program. So Lynn is going to do that. And so is our assistant treasurer collector, Chris Faricano. So is also going to do that. And then the kids department summer reading program opened on Monday, and they already had 188 kids signed up. So it's very exciting, very busy at the library. And the building department, obviously, we've seen them a couple times a week based on the new process for creating or expanding outdoor seating. And so Fred has provided a list to you of all of the restaurants that have expanded or created outdoor seating, some of which have not come before you because they don't have a liquor license. And so those particular restaurants include South Street Diner, the Bistro, and Panera. So that's it.
Excellent. Okay, great. Issues and correspondence of the selectmen. We'll start with Selectman Emery. She's all set on mute, but she said she's all set. Selectman Hashmi. Said if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry, it's your first meeting, so I'm going to be nice to you.
Wow, thank you
yeah.
so much.
I'm just going to briefly I wanted to recognize a young man by the name of Ryan Lavoie and wanted to wish him happy 13th birthday. This is a young man that has been born with a rare genetic skin disorder, and which is usually associated with a maximum 2-year survival rate. And that the fact that he's still with us is is a testament to him, his courage, his family's courage, and the fact that there's an entire community of people that are wishing this boy well speaks once again of the deep reservoir of caring that we have in our community. And it just goes to the fact that ultimately we are all sustained and nourished by each other, and it's something that the fact that we still do this in our community is something that is worth commendation. And again, I just wanted to wish him a happy birthday.
He's an amazing kid. Nicely done. Anything else? Or you're going that easy on me? All right. Selectman Edinburgh.
Okay, 2 very quick things. I want to thank everyone who was able to join us for town meeting on Saturday through with the strange circumstances and the heat and being split across 3 rooms, moving through the agenda, moving through the warrant articles with respectful and thoughtful debate. It was good to see. And I know many people felt for a variety of reasons they weren't able to participate. I hope they at least watch the proceedings on TV live or recorded to see how those who were there represented their interests. And I think on the warrant articles that had disagreements, it was a good discussion, thoughtful and effective as we move forward through the agenda. The second thing I just wanted to mention is when the discussion of the town seal was published on the agenda, I had a number of people reach out to me and say, how many people wrote to you guys to get you to put that on the agenda? I want to let everyone know it was 1. It was 1 concerned citizen who did the research, who came up and didn't just say, here's a problem, but here's an approach and a way to do it in a thoughtful way, requesting time to bring it forth. And so I know people think it takes, and it does take a measure of bravery to stand up in public and advocate. But hopefully, I think one of the things I hope comes out of our discussion this evening is that part of our caring community is that your boards and commissions are open to input and open to new ideas and are receptive. And so maybe it shouldn't be as scary and maybe not take as much courage as some people think it is. And on that, I will say, signing out. We're done with issues and correspondence.
Thank you. Selectman Johnson.
At first, I'm just going to take it personally that it sounded like Syed was letting you off easy, but he was bringing me down hard every single meeting. So, Syed, I heard that in what was.
Well, but you could take it, right? I believed in you, right?
You don't know how many times I cried after the meetings, but no.
It builds strength and character, man. Builds strength and character.
Absolutely does. No, first off, again, real quick as well, I wanted to thank the community for the town election, and thank you for voting me in for another term. Appreciate that, and the folks waiting for that time. It definitely was a unique election period, longer than normal, but I do think that the community participated well, both through the ability to mail in as well as to appear in person. And again, kudos to the town clerk and her office and her volunteer / paid staff, but her staff that basically comes in and works and does the work they do, as well as the volunteers that helped out that day to make that happen. Likewise, as Selectman Edinburgh said, all the folks that made town meeting happen. This was, unique, as we all know, but it was a ton of work that went on by a whole host of people that I won't even start beginning names because I'll miss people there. But it really was a work of a village to put that together so that we could do it in as safe a manner as possible, but truly get the work of the town move forward. So thank you for that. And finally, I will sound like a broken record here, but I did want to echo just what Selectman Edinburgh just said, is that the urging of our residents, whether in person, whether on social media, again, to be respectful of others, to be tolerant of other decisions, to be open-minded. It doesn't mean we can't debate, but let's keep it at levels that they're discussions of different points of view, and acknowledge that people have different points of view, and let's work together as a town. That's what's going to make us all better in the end. So thank you, Alan, for what you said. Thank you for what the rest of the board said throughout this evening. I do think that we're moving in the right direction, but let's just keep it that way, and urge everyone to be thoughtful, be tolerant. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I want to, yes, Lee.
I'm sorry, I just had one other thing I wanted to remind people. I don't know if everybody who's watching now was here when the Board of Health was on, but our new COVID cases went from 3 to 2 to 1 over the last 3 weeks. So that's wonderful news. However, the Board of Health keeps reminding us we cannot take our foot off the neck of COVID. We've got to wear our masks, we've got to do the social distancing, got to follow the rules, waiting to get into your restaurant or getting your seating. And as difficult as that is, because summer's coming, we just want to be a lot freer, but we have to be extremely careful.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Good point. We want to keep bending that curve. So I'm not sure if we actually acknowledged it before. Ian, you brought up the elections. I want to just congratulate everyone who ran. We may have done that, but sometimes these things seem to be a blur. For those that ran, again, congratulations. I want to particularly acknowledge a new member of the planning board, Mr. Tim Kohler. So congratulations for winning that seat on the board as a write-in. And I also want to acknowledge Raghu Nandan, who ran as a sort of an off-election for the off-election seat for the school committee. And then his term came to a close and he ran again. So I think it's a testament to sometimes you dip your toe in the water and then you decide that you really want to swim in this crazy pool. So so congratulations to everyone. And Ian, it's great to have you back on. So that's great. I want to thank Westborough TV for, Lee usually does that, but I'll Westborough TV for all of their support of covering these meetings. And actually, I'm going to put a plug in for Frank and Mary in Westborough. The next two episodes, actually, we're going to be talking with Karen Henderson, the general manager of Westborough TV, and talking about the importance of public access television. What does it mean? What have they learned through this process? And sort of what is that future? So for those that are interested, you can watch us through cable TV or live or stream, excuse me. And then finally, I just want to thank the board for their faith in raising their hands to support me to be chair. I appreciate, and I appreciate your support and faith that I can provide some leadership. So, and with that, I'm going to note the time that we're ending this session, Mr. Former Chair Johnson. It's 8:37. I'm going to take all the credit for this first meeting.
And I'm taking the credit because I just moved things along when I wasn't chair. So.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be many long ones. So with that, we do have an executive.
You're going to do a much better job than me, and they're all going to be short.
Yeah. Anyway, we do have an executive session. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I move that we enter into executive session for the purpose to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate for 30 Belknap Street and 31 to 33 Eli Whitney, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, firefighters related to act under authority of open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 22F, review and approval of executive session minutes, to discuss trade secrets or confidential, competitively sensitive, or other proprietary information provided.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Emery, yes.
Enberg,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hashmi.
Yes.
Okay, Chris, you might have to help me here. I don't have the exact language, but the chair just declares that an open meeting would be detrimental to the town's negotiation position, and therefore we will not resume in open session.
Perfect.
Okay.